Good evening, listeners, brave navigators of the enigmatic and the concealed. Have you ever felt the pull of the unanswered, the allure of the mysteries that shroud our existence? For more than a decade, a unique comic publisher has dared to dive into these mysteries, unafraid of the secrets they might uncover. This audacious entity is Paranoid American. Welcome to the mystifying universe of the Paranoid American podcast.
Launched in the year 2012, Paranoid American has been on a mission to decipher the encrypted secrets of our world. From the unnerving enigma of MK Ultra mind control to the clandestine assemblies of secret societies. From the awe-inspiring frontiers of forbidden technology to the arcane patterns of occult symbols in our very own pop culture. They have committed to unveiling the concealed realities that lie just beneath the surface. Join us as we navigate these intricate landscapes, decoding the hidden scripts of our society and challenging the accepted perceptions of reality.
Folks, I've got a big problem on my hands. There's a company called Paranoid American making all these funny memes and comics. Now, I'm a fair guy. I believe in free speech as long as it doesn't cross the line. And if these AI-generated memes dare to make fun of me, they're crossing the line.
This is your expedition into the realm of the extraordinary, the secret, the shrouded. Come with us as we sift through the world's grand mysteries, question the standardized narratives, and brave the cryptic labyrinth of the concealed truth. So strap yourselves in, broaden your horizons, and steel yourselves for a voyage into the enigmatic heart of the Paranoid American podcast, where each story, every image, every revelation brings us one step closer to the elusive truth.
Happy 2025, and today we're going to talk about what if National Lampoon wrote the Turner Diaries. And with me to talk about this particular topic, I've got Raven and Top Lobsta from the Nephilim Death Squad. What's up, guys? Welcome to Paranoid American. Long overdue.
Yes, dude, thanks for having us. I love, right off the bat, number one, your intro. Number two, this setup is tremendous. I was wondering what you were going to do with this, and you know, plastering us on this wall is fantastic. Thanks for having us, bro. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, I got more of these too, but usually I use that for the little intro. But also, Lobsta, how you doing, man?
What's up, guys? Yeah, this is awesome. I'm glad that we're back. I thought that I was like, you know, Paranoid is the type of guy that like he'll come on our show, but he's like, don't come on mine. I don't want you to embarrass my shit. But yeah, I'm happy to be here, man. I have no idea what we're gonna get into. Maybe some gay stuff, maybe some cool stuff.
Everything. Yeah, well, I mean, the thumbnail had a little shot of Raven's top surgery, and then we talked about your sort of botched brisk, but behind the scenes, you both mentioned those are actually become pretty personal, so we'll steer a little bit away from those.
Yeah, I was hoping to not discuss that in front of a live audience. It is a sensitive subject.
The scars are literally still healing, so
they're still oozing. They're oozing plasma.
Well, I hit a go because we were already talking about a topic that I've been fascinated with forever. Let me just lead this with saying this is going to be more about you than me, but I'm going to start with a personal story. And I'm a little bit embarrassed, but I also feel like it's endearing now that I'm old enough to know the difference. I'm in my 40s now, but when I was a younger kid, like pre-13, I was probably like 8 or 9, I saw the commercial for the Guess Who board game, and it was like, is your person bald? And like you'd see the old dude like, oh, I guess that's me. You know what I mean? Like you would actually this is late 80s, I guess.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing this, and I thought the pieces talked. Like there wasn't a little disclaimer on the bottom or anything that said that they didn't talk. And one of my friends, I guess, a couple years later, they ended up getting one for Christmas. And I went over there and we set the game up, and I start asking the questions. And I swear I thought it was broken, or he got like the knockoff Kmart version instead of the Toys R Us official Milton Bradley version.
But it blew my mind
to figure out they didn't actually talk. And then I think that same year I saw the commercial again, and the commercial had a little like line at the bottom. It was like, game pieces do not actually talk. And every time that would come on for the longest time, people would be like, what idiot, you know, like what dumbass think that the pieces could, why do they even need that? And
Why do they even need to say that?
That was me. Like and I'm not even making that up. I legitimately thought that they talked. I mean, I was like 8. Maybe I should have known by then, but
You're
Yeah,
like
that's
the
a little bit
lady.
long in the tooth to think that the little cardboard figures are going to talk to you.
You're the lady that got the like hot sign that put on McDonald's cups.
Yep.
She like burned her
Right.
legs. Although that there's a little bit of a misnomer with that.
It was legit. They actually gave it to her
Oh,
too
dude,
hot.
I
Yeah.
know that case. That's not true. Top.
Well, I mean, it's not like it's true, but not in the sense that she was an idiot. It was like they gave her a coffee that was like 1,000 degrees. It was a malfunctioning coffee dispenser or coffee pot. So they put it in the pot, and she puts it between her legs. And the pictures are brutal, man. Like her legs were black.
I had no idea. We always looked at that lady as like a piece of shit. Oh, shout out Subliminal Messenger and Doomsday Cracker.
Yeah, they don't like that we're switched. Usually, I'm on
they
that
don't like
side,
it.
but
You gotta switch us sides. It's not good.
Okay,
Thank
better.
you very much. But yeah, we always looked at that lady like she was a terrible person. Like I thought she just got burnt by hot coffee, which go figure. And then she sued, and they had to bring that to the cups as like a defense mechanism from future people who were going. I had no
Honestly,
idea that it was she actually got the shit burned out of her from.
That made me like a conspiracy. I don't know if it was one of the things that made me a conspiracy theorist, but it's one of those where you're like, your whole life you hear about this lady and you're like, what a stupid bitch. But then
Yeah.
you actually look into it like, oh my God, she was wrong. These people were just reckless with their coffee.
Yeah,
Scalding
yeah.
hot coffee.
I
That's
became
the black pill version, yeah, of the lady with the coffee. Is that what actually woke you guys up into reality?
no
Yeah,
my
then I
mine
started looking for the Nephilim.
mine was twofold. One of them was your fault, and the other one was the Hat Man's fault. So I had the Hat Man in my family, and that made me, start looking up what the Hat Man was. But the other one was Disney animators putting penises on the cover of Little Mermaid. Writing sex in the
Everywhere, literally.
everywhere they possibly could, and I refused to take the for grant or just on face value that animators thought it would fun. Now in hindsight, I'm like, animators probably thought it was funny, but I still think there's some nefarious in it. But that's what got me to the show, was like, why are all these penises in Disney cartoons?
Well, also two things on that I always found fascinating. One is that when they're not drawing this like Kitty Bambi crap, like what do you think they're drawing? They're drawing pinups. That's pretty much what the other line of work was. If you could draw really, really well, if you were a great illustrator, you probably knew the human form, and that's kind of been like a timeless aspect of artwork. And that also
probably drew
dovetails.
some bomb ass titties.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of, I think related to that, a lot of those original Disney classics, imagine for a second, you're working at the top, like the peak of your career for Walt Disney himself. You're working on these feature-length movies. You get drafted, or you voluntarily sign up to go to war. You go and you murder lots of people. You see blood. You see like the people next to you dying and their guts spilled over. Eventually, if you survive, you go back home and you go right back to that same Disney movie that you were already working on. It's a whole completely different level of person and mentality, those classic animators. These weren't nerds that were just trapped in a room and then all they did was draw pictures of like stupid baby shit all the time, right? Like these were like men's men that went off to war and came back and utilized the weird things they saw and the trials and tribulations they went through, and that got embedded into those classic. It's not the same as Frozen, right? We're not talking about like Rapunzel and Tangled. We're talking about the OG. So there's something really potent about those original classics. So when it gets into like the sex and the dicks and like, yeah, this guy probably saw like 40 people die at his own hand, so he's gonna draw a dick on the cover of a poster if he wants to.
Because he can. Who's gonna stop him, really?
Yeah, Disney's gonna allow it. Disney's
Like,
gonna
you
allow
will-
it.
He'll be wearing your ear if you try to stop him.
This dude just like, he hasn't blinked in 7 years, and you're gonna tell him not to put the dick on that Little Mermaid
Yeah,
cover?
he's going.
Yeah, right.
He's like, I'm either gonna draw a dick on the cover of this, or I'm gonna draw a dismembered body with its guts hanging out in the background, and leave it up
And
to
it's
you to
gonna
find
be
it.
you.
Yeah, it's gonna have your face.
Really, the classic movies had so many more like adult messages to teach kids about life and death. It's not the same DEI things that they get accused of now, but that's because the Disney corporation is now this like egregore, right? The idea has become so potent that it's now outliving its CEOs, and it kind of has a mind of its own, since there wasn't a Disney to like keep it in check. They didn't have that Rosicrucian magic touch to like keep the magic alive.
Well,
Well,
speaking
we
of which,
were.
I was watching on Timeline Cleanse the other day a video where Donald infiltrates sort of this occult order, and it's all about numerology and Pythagoras, right? And so the whole thing is like Donald exploring the significance of the pentagram and how it creates over and over again sort of the golden ratio, like the Fibonacci sequence. It can within it infinitely create a perfect rectangle, a perfectly ratioed rectangle. And he's got like a pentagram on his palm, and he's wearing like a hooded cloak, and he's doing a secret handshake in order to get in this hidden, area where all these other, virtually a cult member or cult members are inside. And it was honestly, I'm looking at it and I'm going like, as much as conspiracy theorists, we tend to rail against all of the various things that are hidden in cartoons and such. I almost would prefer Disney go back to that sort of thing, because that was fascinating, as
Well,
opposed to like obfuscating it and hiding it within
what do we have
symbolism.
now, though? This is like instead of obfuscating the occult now. I mean, I guess they still sort of do, but everything that's like aimed at the children is now just trans. But it's kind of like the war of their time, right? So these people were doing this occult stuff. They were in actual war. They were seeing gruesome shit. They drew about it. They talked about it. Our people went through college. So what what we're
Way
gonna
worse.
get? Yeah, where you're gonna get this weird institutionalized gay
Soft.
propaganda. Yeah, pick your poison, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think that Walt Disney in this context, he was very much binary, well-defined binary, smoke cigars, whiskey, like man's man, came up in that sort of era generation. And also the whole concept, like he had gone through Demolay, which is like Cub Scout Freemasons for kids. And he gets raised in that environment by the guy that actually created Demolay, and not just like some random chapter, but he was there at the foundation of it. So I think that he came out of the gate like roaring, like filled with occult knowledge, and he was able to continue that throughout his career. But as soon as he starts sundowning a little bit, as soon as the egregore outpowers him, it turns into its own thing, and now he no longer has that ability to like instow like the knowledge that he wants or any sort of occult
It
knowledge.
becomes too
Now
big.
it's just whoever the highest bidder. That's the
Yes.
knowledge that gets spread.
Yeah, and unfortunately, right now the highest bidder is also worried about like sort of like DEI topics or like LGBTQ awareness sort of a thing, or at least that's the past paradigm that we've been in.
And getting rid
You
of
know.
redheads, which is a weird theme, right? Like that's a very consistent theme within Disney movies in particular.
It's very strange. Yeah, Disney movies are some of the most, I mean, like obviously the most celebrated, but some of the most cryptic and symbolism filled. In that way, they become very fun. Like I that's kind of the lens that I watch things through. Like right now, I'm watching a show called Black Summer, and I was just looking for some zombie content because I finally got over my zombie fatigue from all of the Walking Dead shit that happened like a decade ago, where we were just inundated with zombies. So sick and tired of it. And we did an episode with a guy named Rob of Black Labs, and he was laying out his case for like the government is trying to do this, trying to create zombies through one pandemic or another, MK Ultra, yada yada yada. And so it sparked my interest again. And what I'm noticing is like, you just can't get away from the, and I know you're very much like this, Thomas, right? It's like you can't watch anything without picking out all the little esoteric symbols and things of that nature. It almost, in some people's eyes, would go, you can't even enjoy a film. I'm like, I think I enjoy it more than you enjoy it because I'm appreciating all these little elements that they put in there. So the main character of this show, Black Summer, is this she's a white chick. I forget what her name is, but she goes from being just a regular mom to all of a sudden thrust into a chaotic zombie apocalypse, and then has to rise to the occasion, kind of a deal. And she goes from being like weak and then, eventually becomes this strong stoic character, but all the while they're hitting you with like divine feminine symbolism. So she's got like a big moon on her shirt, right? So like the sun is stereotypical, it's masculine, the moon is feminine energy. It's the goddess kind of a deal. She's got a shirt at some point with an inverted triangle on it, which, that's the masculine is the upright triangle, the feminine is the inverted triangle. So it's like I don't know. Let me ask you this. When you're doing that sort of thing, is this at all a subconscious thing that anybody would derive any value from? Or because most people don't see it on the surface, or is this just for the people that are digging and looking?
I mean, there's a synchro-mystic aspect, and this is like another version of noticing, right? You're just noticing patterns, and those patterns might be there by design. They might be there just because now we're hyper aware of certain patterns that are going on, so it's a lot easier to see everything through those lens. But I think more overtly, there's like a very active pendulum swing. It's that there's been this idea that all of media, video games, movies, everything has been so male dominant, so white male dominant specifically, like all the big action movie star. And this is worldwide. This isn't just limited to America. Like even American output, I would argue, is like we're winning culture war more than any other kind of war, where most people know Michael Jackson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Kanye West, right? It doesn't matter what country you're in, you likely have heard about some of these characters. So that's kind of been, and ironically, those are all dudes, right? So you've got the last, like 100 years of male-dominated entertainment media. So now, even whether or not that has relevance to it, the perception now means that the antithesis of that is to take like hold of that pendulum swing and try and swing it the other way as far as it'll go. So now you're going to get way more girl boss sort of content, and you're going to have like a reactionary resurgence, almost like an attempt to be balancing this perceived sort of imbalance over the last 100 years. I don't think it's going to last 100 years, but I think that's all we're seeing. And I don't even know if it requires a secret cabal of like lesbians to be behind that. It could just be like a very natural,
It's a secret society of good guys.
Right. I mean,
sorry.
I love them. No, I love them. Are you kidding me? I love Cheney. That's just she'd get it. No, I think you're probably right. It can happen organically as just pushback from the last 100 years of iron grip culture that we've had on the whole thing. But you know who's not doing that? Like India. India's not doing that. They still have action movies where dudes are riding motorcycles through the air into volcanoes, you know, shooting with a shotgun in each hand, doing double backflips. Like, I appreciate that about India. They're not doing that anytime soon.
I wouldn't trade literally anything in India for anything in America. And that's not said with any disrespect to anyone from India or any of my friends that might be Indian or maybe Vedic culture if you go back far enough. But we're talking about 2025. I wouldn't trade a single thing, dude. A bottle of water, a stamp, anything.
But I'd say it with all disrespect. I wouldn't trade it. Wouldn't trade it at all.
I know you would.
100%. You want to know
this
something
is
interesting?
Still an industry that I kind of work in. So.
Yeah, they'll be fine. Listen, an interesting fact about Michael Jackson. Something that I looked up. Guess where where the Jackson 5 originated at, David?
Oh yeah. I learned this. I don't know if you told me. I think you did tell me. It's Indiana.
I don't know this either. Where was it?
Indiana.
Not India.
Okay. No, not India.
No. I know I'm not making that connection, but I mean, do you want to explain why that's significant, David?
Yeah. So, more or less, what's happened is, we're big fans of the show Confessionals. It seems that Tony Merkel has been unearthing a very interesting coincidence, and that coincidence is that he's found a number of people, and so have we, independently of him, and interviewed him on our show. People who are having this experience of being recruited in a dreamscape scenario and being upgraded or warned of a coming war. And that sounds really bizarre and far-fetched, that you would have dreams where entities are upgrading you for war, trying to recruit you, warning of one that's coming. And it's strange on its face, but it's even stranger when you start to amass like 5, 6, 7, 8 different people with no connection to one another, all telling the same story. It becomes even stranger when they start telling you that the person who's doing this recruiting is Baal, which is fun. And a lot of people are talking about, like I said, independent of one another, being exposed to what they describe as a throne room. It's underground in a cave system. It's a room that is the central congregation point for several different cave systems. And this is happening in a dream, mind you. Although some of them claim that it's not a dream, this is just an experience that they're having. Maybe they're awake, but they're going to a different realm. So there's some variation there. But long story short, the name of the game is you're being recruited by an entity for a coming war. And it turns out all these people are in the same location. They don't have any connection to one another, but that their stories and where they reside. And where they reside is southern Indiana. What's interesting about that is that there is a tremendous cave system that stretches through the Appalachias, and it also heads west across the southern point of Indiana, also into Illinois a little bit. And it's probably the biggest cave system in North America, certainly in America, in the U.S., but it's absolutely massive. Like I said, it stretches all throughout the Appalachians. So somehow all these people are having incredible visions and dreams about being recruited by the same entity, and they all live in the same area, and it all takes place underground. And it just so happens to be that beneath where they live is a gigantic cave system. So this is something that we've been looking into for a while. We're actually working on, and as a matter of fact, we were talking about you, Thomas, and how you would be a good fit for this. Maybe we'll talk a little bit after the show. But we are, shout out Doomsday, there you go, Gary, Indiana. Same place, by the way, that Stranger Things takes place in, which you have this upside down realm, and this bringing of entities into this realm.
Same place as that the book Angelology, like the main focus of that place. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody hit me up in a chat the other day when I was talking about this, and they said, "Hey, have you ever heard about the book Angelology?" It's a fictional book, but basically the premise is fallen angels and Nephilim, subterranean, right? They're living underground and they are amassing an army and preparing to do battle on the surface. Now, there's 3 locations in this fictional book where these things happen: Serbia, I believe, China, and Indiana, interestingly enough. So you have this like over and over again, something is nodding and nudging about this Indiana situation. And we were talking about doing a documentary. We actually spoke to a documentarian the other day, and we were talking about how you'd be a good fit for it, because a lot of what we want to highlight is sort of, it also overlaps with using psychedelic substances, entering these altered states, and thematically having interaction with various entities. And sometimes these entities are, of a certain pattern.
You had me as substances, and I also wanted to mention the Michael Jackson link here too. I didn't know that he came from Indiana, but Michael Jackson, as weird as it sounds, he also kind of seemed like he saw himself like a warrior of Christ in a lot of different ways.
He's a Jehovah's Witness, I think. But yeah, I mean, I really like Michael.
Yeah, I don't think he was when he became a pop star, but
no. But I still hold out for Michael Jackson being a good guy. That's just where I'm at. I think they besmirched him. I think they lied about it. I know the people that came out and did that documentary, there was a lot of really shady shit about that, where, initially they were like, no, not the case at all. And then they were pressured to one way or another. I don't really know the details, but, I'm hoping that is not the case. I do like
What about David Koresh, unsung hero?
Look, he's got my namesake, right? David Koresh, David Corbo. I like that. I like the idea of having a cult one day called the Davidians. They were a doomsday cult too, ultimately, right? They believed that the end times were coming.
And he could shred.
Oh, really? Could he?
Oh, absolutely. He's got an album out. You can find an album, and he absolutely shreds. Better than Charles Manson wishes that he ever was.
I love that you can come and talk to Thomas the Paranoid American and learn that David Koresh was a hell of a musician. I think Top's actually frozen there. So
yeah, when they were trying to flood him out of the Waco compound, they were starting to play like really loud rock music, I think, and they thought that this would like hurt their sensibilities because it was this religious Christian cult, not realizing that this dude was like born to shred. And I think that he even set up his own half stacks and pointed them back out at the ATF and the FBI, and he started going through, and they realized that wasn't going to be the routine.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go out, that's a pretty cool way to go out. You know what I mean? That reminds me of like the whole Stranger Things where he's like, shredding on top of the trailer. He's playing like Metallica or something like that. The Gayvidians. I'm sure Top will be right back. Just keep an eye out from there. He is. So, I mean, I don't know what it is, but we're looking at this idea. You know why? Because we're starting to look at Joe Rogan skeptically. It's basically like you have this situation where he's recommending that people do, not recommending, but he's certainly influencing, right? The biggest podcast on the planet, the biggest show on the planet, influencing countless people to start doing dimethyltryptamine. And we have some theories about the realm that you go to and the entities that inhabit that realm, the machine elves and the jesters, what they actually are. But he's also combining that with this sort of like John C. Lilly sensory deprivation tank situation, which, if I'm not mistaken, they use a lot of that research in the MK Ultra program, didn't they? For the tanks that he would jerk the dolphins
Yeah,
off.
well, I mean, the MK Ultra program showed the CIA basically had a complete monopoly over psychedelic research for at least 2 decades, and
Right.
up to the point of buying the world's supply of LSD-25 as soon as it hit the market. So no one else in the world could theoretically get their hands on any. So in that case, yeah, they pretty much owned all. And I just want to shoehorn in really quick too that Joe Rogan's also the guy that had people drinking like horse semen on Fear Factor. So like that, his influence of getting people to do crazy things goes way back into the 90s or the early 2000s.
It's almost like
That
they
is true.
recognize that in him. Right? I mean, look, if we wanted to go full schizo and say, well, what if the Joe Rogan Experience was an asset of sorts, a cultural steering machine? Because, look, the intelligence agencies are never going to let a good grassroots movement go unco-opted. So you have to imagine at some point, everybody's favorite podcaster was co-opted, right? And
Right, you would be, I would be like basically embarrassed of my intelligence agencies if they didn't have that kind of initiative.
exactly. And I think you would look at Rogan and go, this guy is really good at getting people to drink cum. I bet you we can get him to get people to do other
Apple-flavored cum.
things. Yes. Donkey cum. So, I mean, look, that's a very strange thing because at its roots, the whole sensory deprivation tank, the float tank thing is, if you look into the origins, it's all about telepathic communication with dolphins. And I believe he was using ketamine or mescaline or something like that. John C.
All the
Lilly.
above, yeah, John C. Lilly. I think they were even using DMT at some points, and they would basically try to achieve a stasis of how much drugs can we keep you in there so that you don't completely pass out or lose consciousness or your wits about you, and then just let them come down and sober up just enough to like report back and give their account to someone else that was there, and then up the dose again and just stay in those isolation time. Like, is where the Altered States movie came from. Essentially, you do it enough, you turn into a caveman and you break into a zoo and you like rape the animals.
Right. So this is where we're coming from. It's like, okay, imagine the lengths as an intelligence asset that you had to, like, I got to conduct this fucking experiment. I got to drug these Johns in the whorehouse and try to, you know what I mean? It's like, you got to go through all these lengths. And it's like, what if we could somehow convince the public to just dose themselves? And you're like, that's unlikely. And then you're like, what if we can convince them to get into a sensory deprivation tank? And you're like, get the hell out of here. All of a sudden you engineer the culture to be receptive to those sorts of things. And look, man, at the end of the day, the stories that you get, and look, here's just one anecdotally. I won't tell the person's story. We're going to have them on at some point. I'm not going to say who it is or anything like that, but somebody goes down this path, kind of new agey, right? Highly into the health and nutrition, but also like the meditation, the psychonaut aspect, a lot of the culture that's been propagated by Rogan. This person was a huge fan of him. Long story short, this guy's doing DMT, XYZ, and all of a sudden his child starts. So he has a profound, seemingly horrifying experience. And then right after that, his child starts hearing audible voices. And he's like 11. You know what I mean? And so the guy can't help but draw the correlation. Yeah, we're going to get K2 is another one. We're going to get Paranoid American smoking spice.
Honestly,
It's called Bayou Blaster in Florida, by the way.
It's called what?
Bayou Blaster.
That's what K2 is called?
I mean, among the many variations, but that was the one that was my particular favorite back in the mid 2000s.
Oh, wait up.
Like
Tell us about your experiences on this. This is we collect K2
Bayou Blaster.
here.
Okay, well, when I moved here, I think a slow while after all my friends moved away, I had no connect anymore for any sort of just if I want to get some marijuana, right? If I just wanted to find some. It was really hard to the point where I had one other friend that was also trying to find it. We would just go to like random clubs, and he went to like a gay club one time, just like to see if he could find like the connect by making himself like the bait. And
looking for spice.
It was not easy. And we ended up just being like, the gas stations got this stuff. And I know what it was. I know that they just took potpourri and some Chinese dude sprayed chemicals on it. And it was a different chemical depending on what day of the week it came. Like there was no consistency. But it did some kind of a trick. But yeah, there was one particular one called Bayou Blaster. And I had done the K2 and all of the ones with the different pouches. But Bayou Blaster was something special. it basically made my friend's heart stop. And it was the first time I was ever in the room with somebody that was saying, like, bring me to the hospital. And usually you're just like, whatever, dude, like you'll sleep it off. You'll give it like 15, 20 minutes. You're in your own head. This point, like he legitimately we probably should have called the ER, but like, fuck that. I don't trust any of the authorities. So we wrote it out, but like he legitimately, like his heart was like coming through his chest at a certain point. And I realized that this was not, and I look into that, and actually some of the original ones, the guy that made it was at some like Hebrew University. I think it was literally called HU dash something. This is crazy, right? And there's another one too that was called like JH something,
Yeah,
which was
JWH.
also, they both, it was the J that you know, and the HU was Hebrew University. And either ways, the guys that created all these original versions of the synthetic THC, like these K2s, they said that they would never do it. Like, do not do this. This is horrific. This is not good for you. So hey, I've got experience. It was out of pure desperation. After that one moment, I really just I ended up finding I put all of my pussy into it, and I found a real connect. And then luckily now we've got like recreational, and I've got a doctor's prescription to do it all. It's like way different now. This was 15 years ago or something. So have you guys done K2?
I haven't, but it was developed by that guy John W. Huffman, and he was like he's experimenting with cannabinoids and the receptors for them. Right. And they stumbled upon this compound. It was called JWH018, and he said it's his biggest regret. He regrets finding it, and then regrets letting the people distribute it in this way that it was a recreational substitute for K2. And basically what they do is like JWH018 is bad. We're going to go to JWH019, 020. And they just keep changing the formula like slightly. But the stories that we've compiled from people, I'll let you tell your story on it, David, but people like fucking basically like, he's like, smoked K2, went to hell. Like my body my spirit fell out of my body, and I was watching myself, went to hell, came back. The next 10 years of my life have been garbage. It's like, but email after email after email. We have another fucking email just sitting in the Gmail right now from somebody else that did K2, got shot in the stomach with a fucking shotgun or something like that. It's crazy stuff. It's a horrible drug.
That's probably one of the better K2 experiences. Then at least it takes your mind off of things.
Bird shot to the chest was one of the better ones. No, for me, it was a non-story. I don't remember doing it at all. My wife brought it to my attention that we actually did do it together when we first started dating. And then I do remember driving back home in New Jersey from Atlantic City. And I remember her driving and her saying, I feel as though I'm made of metal. I am a robot now. And then she continued to drive all the way home. So I don't know. I didn't have that experience. But yeah, Top is 100% right. It's like, everybody that's emailing us has had some sort of demonic encounter on it. And then, some sort of black cloud hangs over their lives for the next decade. But, a lot of these substances, even the same thing with marijuana too, where it's like somewhere there's an elderly CIA agent who's just slapping his knees at how psychedelic marijuana has become because the industry has now taken it and, sacrificed the CBD, dialed up the THC to like spaceman levels, and now everybody is on this high anxiety inducing, but low psychedelic dose at all times. Everybody's just because weed culture has kind of done that. It's like everybody is high.
You got to just supplement that with microdosing mushrooms in order to get that back. Yeah.
So now it's like our media is MK Ultraing us to whatever degree. We're getting subliminal messages flashed and all these high level concepts. Some people say that the degree to which we've been inundated with like, emulations of Masonic ceremony and things like that. If you do believe that, if you are watching the Super Bowl and you think that there's some element of that and they're actually doing a ceremony on the stage and you're on some sort of like low grade psychedelic, but really high anxiety state, you're essentially cutting out the middleman of the agent who used to have to strap you in the chair. What's the Clockwork Orange style and peel your eyeballs open and inundate you. So now it's just steadily happening.
That's what Rogan is. And I like Rogan. I wish I could get on his show one day, but it's like they've cut out the middleman. He's now convincing you to do it to yourself. And we just, it's like a fucking self-service checkout. This is exactly what they've done. But it's instead of at Walmart where I'm scanning my own shit, I am now microdosing myself and subjecting myself to pure torture. And I don't think I'm doing that to myself, because like I feel like if you're aware of some of the symbology that they're spreading, you're less susceptible to it. At least if you understand what it is. Like I don't think, knock on wood, that they'll ever, have me do some kind of a school. I'm not gonna say it on your channel, but the person who doesn't know, the one that's just kind of like, yeah, I'm just gonna do a little bit of this, a little bit of K2, and then I'm gonna watch the Super Bowls. Like, God only knows what's getting through their head, man.
A little bit of K2 and I'm gonna watch the Super Bowl. Unbelievable. What a Sunday.
It only really, anyone that ever says like, let's go do a lot of K2, like that's a problem. I don't think anyone ever wants to do more than just the bare minimum of K2, because it is such a horrible chemical. And what's wild is that there are people that are addicted to K2 that have access to like quote unquote, real drugs now. They don't have to go to this gas station sort of like substitute, but people will actively seek out K2 because it offers this like unique. I can't relate to that part at all. And I think that I'm almost pro self-checkout psychedelic, if that were a thing.
Yeah, I'd rather MK Ultra me.
Because on the other end of that, I guess maybe a bad analogy, but if you are like a F1 driver, if you're like a stunt driver, when I was working at Disney, that was one of the cool things, is behind the in the backstage of like what's now Hollywood Studios, but that's where the stunt race drivers would do all of their sort of like practice. So you could go and hang out with them and like watch them. Sometimes they'd even let you get into the car if there was no one around to basically fire them for doing that. But there's this aspect that when they're driving the car and they're going over the jumps and they know when they're going to fishtail and they know all these different moves, they know when to brace themselves, when to like tighten up their core so they don't get whiplash and all this. If you're riding shotgun, you don't know every single move that they're going to do. So it's almost like if this were the MK Ultra analogy, right? Like now we don't have to be in the passenger seat where you're constantly getting whiplash because you got no idea what way it's going to go. Now you're in the driver's seat and you know when to brace your core, and you can kind of like guide it a little bit more. So I do like that extra level of control over the situation, but it's not like you have to be in one of those seats. You can also just be a bystander and not be in the car.
It's like being in a torture chamber and you're strapped to a thing for a long time and they're just torturing you and zapping you, and then they undo the cuffs and you go, give me that cattle prod. And you start just zapping yourself. That's what it is. It's the same energy. I'd rather do that. Let me zap myself, please. But I just think that, what you end up hearing on these experiences, it does cross over into like a pretty biblical place. Like we were talking to Jay Dyer, and there was this guy in the 70s. I forget what his name was, but he was basically like his own psychonaut, right? He was deciding outside of this MK Ultra program, like he was going to inundate himself with, giant dumps of LSD and do this in a research sort of a vein. And eventually what ends up happening is he starts communicating with an entity on a regular basis. This entity eventually exposes itself and says that it's called Moloch. And it said back in like the 60s or 70s that it was going to be the king of the West one day or something like that, the king of America one day. And look, anecdotal, who the hell knows? Just because a dude wrote it down doesn't mean that it's definitively true. But there's no shortage of people bumping into entities that have a name that if you're researched in whatever the biblical corners or Sumerian text or X, Y, and Z, you'll find a corresponding name for that deity in some sort of mythos somewhere. And so I think that there really is a spiritual realm. I believe that 100%. I believe that there are entities of all kinds of variations that inhabit those spiritual realms. And I think that we are, Tucker Carlson was recently talking to like Roseanne Barr or somebody like that. And he said that, I think it was Sean Ryan. And he said, and that guy's a Fed, that we in the West have lost our connection to the spiritual realm. And then he speculated as to whether or not it was on purpose. You can speculate to that, but I believe he's correct, and take Tucker Carlson with a grain of salt. But, I think that's a valid criticism of the West here. And so, Top always highlights it really well. He'll make fun of Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan will say like, I'm not going surfing, man. The ocean is like shark soup. So in other words, you can't see all the various creatures that are in the ocean. It's super dangerous. But he's like, get in this float tank and do DMT, dog. Like, you don't know what you're interacting with God forbid you're interacting with something ancient and adversarial that doesn't like you because, go figure, the things that inhabit that realm maybe aren't all the biggest fans of us. And so we're just going into this realm, this shark soup with no map whatsoever. And we're doing it MK Ultra style. And I just don't know where that leads. But for some people, it leads to a horrible place where their kid starts hearing voices all of a sudden, So that's kind of the nature of the documentary. And we hope to flesh out the names of some of these entities and then show historical context for them and then show testimony from individuals who are encountering them. But we thought that it would be a great conversation to have with you on the topic of these CIA mind control programs and the usage of these psychedelics.
I'm in, man. I mean, who do we get to meet first, Ball or Moloch? Do you have like a top 10 list or what?
We know Ball's in Indiana somewhere. So, I mean, if you're down to do some
to
spelunking.
Yeah, just go to one of these fucking underground tunnels. He has a throne room. Pretty cool, I guess. Maybe he has a goblet too.
Oh, he's definitely got a goblet.
I mean, what are you even doing with your life if you don't have a goblet to go with all of the child sacrifice that's happening at your feet constantly? And it's interesting you brought those two up too, because Baal meaning like Lord or King or ruler, and Moloch coming from Malik or Malik, which also I believe meant like king or lord or ruler. So these are these two weird amalgamations that if you do encounter an entity that's Baal or Moloch, you're probably dealing with like a Voltron level sort of entity where it's comprised of all these other like smaller entities that make up this bigger one, because that's kind of what both of those guys are. So I don't know if we should find out if there's like a specific type of K2 that you can dial in for more Baal or more Moloch or something. Like what are like the freestyle Coke machines, but it would be like the spray that goes onto your K2.
Well, you ever see that meme where it's like, it's making fun of the sort of political paradigm, the left versus the right thing. And it's like, vote for Baal, vote for Moloch, and it's got like kind of the old drawings of each one. And it's whatever it is, two wings of the same bird. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. We were just talking to Grey Pilled about. Jules, the Grey Pilled podcast, was just on our show. And
shout out, Jules.
Yes, and there's this kind of like misnomer, right? When you hear, and I'm guilty of it, I've made the mistake before, but it's like when you hear names, especially like Baal, you think of that as like an individual entity. It's kind of the same mistake that we seemingly make within Christianity. Yeah, this is not good. They've started. I feel compelled to explain this on every show that I'm on.
Let it sit.
Well,
you told them to call you master. They're doing it.
No, I did not tell them to call me master, and they also do not regard me with that level of respect whatsoever. These people know that it's going to come back to bite me in the ass, and they think that it's hilarious to call me master, and it is very hilarious, and it will come back to bite me in the ass. And to their credit, it's very funny. So fucking A, man. What the hell is that? Oh, so I've made this mistake with, and I think Christians make this mistake too, right? We hear like Satan, and we think of that as like an individual entity, but Satan is more like a title that it seems like many entities throughout the Bible have held at some point, these fallen angels. And Satan is like the accuser, the adversary. And it seems like his function is one of like testing mankind almost in a judicial capacity, as if he's like the prosecutor, maybe. And Baal is also one of those things that is like a title. It means, like you said, Lord or King or something to that effect. And I think it's one of those things that you would have also found multiple entities sat in that position throughout time, right? So you have like Hadad, who seemingly is a counterpart, a Sumerian counterpart for Zeus,
right,
which is the
right.
Greek
one.
one.
Yeah, but you've got Baal Hadad or Baal Hammon, which over enough time turn into Kronos and Saturn, and then you've got Baal Zaphon, who turns into Zeus, because Zaphon was the name of the cave where Zeus was apparently created, but the original name would have been like Lord of Zaphon, Lord of this area. But then since Zeus was born in that area, then Zeus basically replaces the concept of Baal Zaphon. But since people know about Baal Zaphon over here and Baal Hadad and Baal Haman and all these Baals, then it just turned like the monotheistic inkling ended up just being like, oh, Baal is the god or Moloch is the god.
Yes.
When really it was like that title, the same thing that you're talking about.
And I find it fascinating that whatever experience these people are having, it's introducing itself as Baal. So it also, if we're to take their stories as the truth, and they're really having these experiences, seems that it's quite comfortable with that, whoever sits in that position now.
Do you think that there's any drug that we could ingest that would let you talk to angels instead of demons? Is it only for sober people? You got to be straight edge to talk to an angel?
So you've talked to Dr. Jerry Marzinski, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So he says that methamphetamine is going to be the most effective one at creating, elements that are reminiscent of schizophrenia. And, in his estimation, schizophrenia is communicating with entities. So, but, also nobody ever has a good time on meth. I don't think you're doing meth talking to good angels and then like just crushing in life. That doesn't happen. So, yeah, man, I don't know. I mean,
that's arguable because technically Ritalin and Adderall are meth.
That's true.
Some of the earliest forms of meth. They were giving that to kids in like the 1900s. So I mean, there's probably some high achieving meth addicts if you can stretch the definition of meth, not just mean like Mexican glass.
I think this stuff it's very much like tuning a radio, right? Depending on the type of drug that you're doing, the amount that you're doing, maybe even the amount of time that you're doing. Because I know when you do schizophrenia, when you do methamphetamine, and when you do it often enough, you kind of just kick that door wide open and basically nail it to the wall, so it can no longer be shut. That the veil is, ripped off the curtain. Some other drugs you have to do to actually activate it. So mushrooms. One of the people that we're talking about in Indiana that has had contact with these entities, he does a lot of mushrooms, or did a lot of mushrooms, a lot of heroic doses, to the point where like he'd be contacting these entities, or
5 dried grams, if anyone's wondering.
That kind of shit, like caps, whatever, straight to the dome. So he'd be the entity would give him like a nudge. This is how he described it to us, and it'd be like, hey, today your bedroom, put your blindfold on,
burn it all down.
Yeah, burn out, fucking kill your girlfriend. No, it was like, but I want to talk, so come over here. This is what you need to do. Take the mushrooms. See you later. And he would do it, but after a while, he didn't even need the mushrooms. It would just kind of, I think he did the same sort of thing where you kick that door wide open, and now that gateway's open, so whatever's coming to you can pass through freely. But I think certain drugs allow you to come in contact with a certain frequency of entity, and there's probably levels, like dimensional levels. So what drug you'd have to do to speak with an angel? Technically, if you're speaking with the fallen, with something down here, it's an Elohim. It's classified as an Elohim. So you are speaking on, I mean, well, I don't know. Perhaps it's their location, like interdimensionally. They're located lower interdimensionally, but they are the same entity. So again, to answer that question, I don't know. And to know,
It almost sound like a jinn, where like it's a different form that can have good or bad. Kind of like good jinn can do bad things, and bad jinn can do good things, and it's sort of murkier.
Yeah, I think that
those are like Nephilim, right? Jinn are like actual offspring
a
products.
jinn, I think would, if you had to draw a correlation, if you said these are all the same things by different names, I think a jinn would fall much more into the disembodied spirit of a previously physical being that was killed, and that spirit is now relegated to this realm. So very much like a demon, or which is, according to the Book of Enoch, it's a Nephilim. It's a dead Nephilim. But Top, we've heard stories a couple of times, right? Where
mathematics.
There you go. So there is this. What ends up happening is there's a couple of instances that we got, because we do a show called NDS Chronicles, and NDS Chronicles is like, if you have had a bizarre, unexplainable, supernatural experience, you can type it out, send it over to nephilimdsquad@gmail.com, and we'll read it on air. And man, does that yield?
Please use punctuation, people. Please
use punctuation, and also be descriptive. It has yielded some of the most interesting results, dude, because it's like we're sleuthing through all these conspiracies, and we're talking to like people who have expertise in this category or that category, but the average person who has had spiritual experiences is something that we haven't been able to delve into until now. So what we do end up getting is sometimes people will do these drugs and they will meet something good, but it is never pumped about what they're doing. Like, well, let's say one was rather benign, right? So a dude does a bunch of K2, I believe, and then basically falls out of the soles of his feet. His spirit slides out, and he goes all the way through the floor, and he's now looking up at himself, and he's dropping further and further, and he goes so far until he encounters sort of like the Gnostic, the Gnostics god, this idea of like a serpent-bodied, lion-headed entity. And when he arrives, it basically just says to him, like, you're a long way from home, child. And then, poof, he's like shot back to his body. But there's other ones where somebody believes that they did talk to God, the Father, the one that Jesus Christ references, and he is fucking really pissed that this guy's doing this, and he takes him on like a ghost of Christmas past, future, present kind of an experience, and just shows him all the horrible shit that's going on, and it's very much like an angry father, and then the guy course corrects after that. But I do think that you can communicate with these entities, but I think that they, unless asked to by God or commissioned or petitioned to by an individual, I think that angels are very much like in a don't intervene
They
unless
got a job to do. Yeah, it seems like they're very much like, listen, man, I got a boss, and you're like, oh, I'm not here for all this extracurricular shit. You're gonna get me in trouble. People building temples and cathedrals to Saint Michael, or the archangel Michael. When I see that, I'm kind of like, man, you're trying to get this dude in trouble or something? Because like, if he accepts that veneration, now he's fallen. So he's been like just chilling and serving this dude for a pension for an eternity, and you're gonna like tempt him in this way. It's kind of disrespectful. So yeah, like, to talk with a real angel, unless they're coming down to talk to you, they probably like again, like, so the dude that just bust in, like you just bust through a veil, and angels are just chilling there, like, oh, fuck, like, this guy's here, he shouldn't be here. They probably don't want to talk to you. They probably just
Catholics, shots fired for all your veneration of all these damn angels.
Stop doing that.
I think so.
It's a bad deal.
The
Don't do that.
fallen, in part, were fallen because they were accepting worship. You know what I mean? So it's like veneration. Let's just say like respect and worship. It's a thin line.
It's a thin line, yeah.
People are fallible, right? So at what point do we go from like respect and veneration to all of a sudden worship? It's like, that's a really tight wire to walk. And then when you start worshiping these things, I do think you're tempting them. Well, it's the same thing.
I need to do like more research on it, but there's like, it's like slick language about the fallen angels, because they're referred to as watchers, right? So they're down here to watch humanity. And then they start to tell humanity about things and teach them shit.
Yeah.
You could imagine how, hell yeah, Nephilim Death Squad. But you could imagine how after a little while, I start to teach you some stuff, and then you start coming back to me, and they're like treating you like a god, because you're teaching them metallurgy, makeup. You're teaching them all this cool shit. So that relationship between human and angel could quickly become, a fallen one. And
right.
It seems like it did. And it's not just that one time, but there's a couple of falls, even throughout the Bible, discussed.
Yeah, so I just don't think that these things, I think you're probably on their radar, but you're also on the radar of these negative entities. The negative entities have already decided they're going to interact, they're going to intervene. It's like the same way, like, there's that idea of like a watcher sort of alien thing where Star Trek does that. Don't they have a non-intervention clause, right? Like, you're not allowed to intercede.
Yeah, but there's the prime directive, although there's also a secret like black ops CIA form, which is the Omega Directive, which actually supersedes the prime directive. And I'm showing my hand too much on this one.
No. I think
good.
I think that when it comes to these things, like the nature of, this is something I say on the show often, the nature of reality is fractal, full stop, right? We know that because if you observe things through a microscope, you can find like the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence on the micro, but you could also zoom out and see it on the macro. It's like echoes or turtles all the way down. You know what I mean? And I think that that's an indication. So it's like the same thing. Well, we'll get there in a second, but it's an indication that like you might be able to extrapolate on that and say, if there are other realms, they might actually have a lot in common with this one. And in the same way that you could say that is the same way that you could say, we have systems where there are, like you're saying, like Black Ops, CIA, FBI. We have systems for everything that are compartmentalized, and there's hierarchies all the way down. I think it would be very much the same thing. In fact, I don't even think that is, I think that's why we have these systems, is because the spiritual realm is bigger than this realm, and it has those systems. You know what I mean? So I think that fractally speaking, all the way down to the minutia, it's the same thing over and over again. And so, yeah, I think you would find a lot of the same shit there as well.
Do you guys think that there's anything that could be good, like objectively good, that you could bring back into this realm that you find in like the the psychedelic spiritual realm, not like through prayer, meditation, but just straight up. It doesn't have to be K2. It can be any drug. But do you think that there's any version of that, or is it all ultimately leading to some like egotistical lies or entities that are just trying to trick or like misguide?
I think
Go ahead, Tom.
in our experience, so I guess the short answer is it's all gonna lead to like one lie or another. It's all about deception. But can you get some really good information on the way there? Yeah. It's just that, like, I don't know. One of the great examples is that Bigfoot that was talking to that lady, right?
Oh, the one that said it was a shit. What was the word? I am
It wasn't Elohim, but it was something similar to that. It's just describing its like relationship to whatever. It was claiming to be an entity,
Eliud.
an Eliud, yeah. So it's claiming to be an entity rather than like a cryptid in the traditional sense. And it had a relationship with this lady, and eventually, like,
What kind of relationship are we talking about?
it was a white woman, so yeah, she had
So
sex with it.
all the way she put
The
out
same
for
one,
it.
the same relationship she had with her dog. Yeah.
Oh shit!
They're at least kissing on the mouth, and maybe more.
At least.
Listen, there was a lot of peanut butter in the house, but
That's first. Yeah, that's first base is open mouth kiss.
I think this thing was trying to convince her, like, it would tell her like basically 99 truths and a lie in our opinion, and it was just leaned into like weird new age Gnostic stuff every single time, and it had like it pushed when she asked it about Christ, it pushed her away from it, like it was as if
No.
was
It said
uncomfortable.
that it knew Christ, but it said that something about the Bible being wrong or something like that. And I mean, you know what it is. It's like, so there are systems that I do think like this realm that we live in. You know, people are like, oh, it's simulation theory or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, so you're telling me that somebody created it and it's not the last stop that we're going to make? Sure, that's not been said before, but you know, there are ways in which this reality is permeable and malleable, and I think that there are systems that you can use to kind of hijack it. Like, I do think that there is a lot of validity to like numerology or the various ways you can use astrology, things like that. But I think the problem is twofold. One, it's the things that told us it, because if you look into it, it's like, well, where did numerology come from? Well, Pythagoras is one thing, but I think even Pythagoras claims to have gotten this information in some sort of an altered state. And what's the other one? Astrology and everything. It's like everything has a ruling entity. The entity that rules over this gave us metallurgy, gave us alchemy, gave us this, gave us that. You typically, even agriculture can be attributed to some sort of entity coming down and teaching people how to do it. But the problem is, if they teach you a true thing, but then they integrate within it a lie, well, then it kind of corrupts the entire thing. Couple that with the fact that like absolute power corrupts absolutely. People are fallible. So we have these systems.
Great example in the Bible. The truth, the lie is that the truth is you will what is it? You'll have like knowledge, but the lie is that you'll be like gods, or that is a true. It's like you'll be like gods, but not explaining that, like, oh no, like these gods, not like that God that you're talking to. So it's like a weird slip of the tongue. Like, you'll be like a god, and a god, I don't, they're cool, but they're fallible as hell. A lot of them get killed. A lot of them get trampled on and have
Even the Bible
fates.
says, or Enoch says, you will die like men, right?
Yeah.
Well, if we're gonna cite the Bible, which Bible's the right Bible?
It's hard to say. I mean, look, through all the translations, you've lost so much really important context because these words are like multi meanings. You know what I mean? It's like you look back into the ancient Hebrew or Greek that it was originally translated from, and you find that one word has like a plethora of definitions that all do interconnect. But like, it seems like their language was so much better than ours because it was like one word gave you a really huge descriptive. And it had so much like context in that one word. I don't think that we do that now. So I think that
one of the
you
words,
would probably, what's that?
One of the words that like I've been stuck on lately. I mean, you could use the example of Nashua. It means to deceive, but it also means to lend on interest, and that's the word that Eve used when describing what the serpent in the garden did to her. But I've been looking at the word eternity in Greek and in Hebrew as they use it, and that word, it's like it extrapolates to a bunch of other words, but one of the like important things to me is that it says that it's for eternity. How they're using it, it just means like an indescribable amount of time. And when I look at that, like we, if we're going to talk about heaven and hell, right? You'll be in heaven for eternity. You'll be in hell for eternity. It's like, what's an eternity? An indescribable amount of time. How does time work on the other side? I don't fucking know. It seems like it's dilated over there, but it certainly doesn't work the way it works here. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. So when it says an indescribable amount of time, it's telling me that there is an amount of time. That's all that you've said to me. There is an amount of time. So you'll spend an eternity in hell or an eternity in heaven, but an amount of time. And that word is very important. But when you read it in the King James Version, it just says eternity. So you're like, forever. We have no concept of it. But they were describing something different. That's really important. Gets lost in translation. So, take the Bible for what it is. Take the translations for what it is, but it's still a very powerful book. I think people need to look into the words and the etymology of some of these words a little bit deeper.
Oh, there's a similar concept too about like the real name of God, and that like it had 72 letters, or there's all these versions, but essentially there's this ineffable name of God, and then the I guess like the theological debate on that one is that. Is it ineffable because it's been lost? Is it ineffable because you can't pronounce it? Like we don't have the vocal cords that could actually say the name of God, or that the second you say it, you just evaporate, or like there might be a self sort of regulating aspect to it to why it's ineffable. But it's a lot of the time, I guess the most surface level explanation of that is just that we don't know it, that you don't know what it is. So like eternity, oh yeah, it's just infinity. It's just so much that you can't calculate it. But I think that's interesting that you're saying is that that it actually is an amount of time because it's being defined as an amount of time. And then I guess eternity might just be so large on the scale they didn't have. Maybe it's like a Noonal or like a Googleplex or some massive number that has like 37 zeros after it. So there really is a set amount of time to go through.
Yeah, and to Top's point, it's like we're getting pretty comfortable with the idea that in other dimensions, time doesn't work this way, right? We've all been beat to death, whether it's through media or otherwise, with this idea that like time doesn't flow in a linear line like a river does. I forget what it is. There's like a movie that famously says like time is like a flat disc, right? Somebody described it once as like, you're putting a record player you're putting a record on a record player and dropping a needle. Now that needle is hitting a specific moment in time, but all of it is happening all at once. It just depends on where the needle is. And look, I don't know if that's true, but if we start to entertain that idea that time is what's keeping us rigidly in this third dimension, and that in order to get to a higher dimension, with which quantum physicists swear there's fucking higher dimensions, there's 11 of them or some shit, I don't know, then you might imagine that when you go and experience those other ones, you're out of the confines of time. So then what does it mean to suffer for an eternity? I don't know. But so we lack the context with which to understand these things. But I do think that there is an overarching story that's happening. When you look at all these different religions and they're telling a very similar story in their mythos, right? There's elements that overlap with one another to the extent that you might even surmise they're talking about the same events. My thing is Christianity wins out, in my opinion, because it's telling you the nature of these deities. So how do I put this? It's like a lot of people will go like, oh, you're Christian, so you think that other religions are wrong. And it's like, well, that's a little reductive. What I would say is that other religions are describing things that are real,
yes,
in my estimation, but the nature of these things. So you talked about the Vedic belief system before, right? And it's like they have all these blue multi-armed entities that also engage in like eating human beings and all this other shit. I just think they're talking about the Nephilim and the fallen. So where things go wrong, it's the same thing where the Anunnaki narrative goes wrong. It's like the Anunnaki, the story of it, what the Sumerians were recording was a series of real events. The problem was they were getting the information about the nature of how they were created, how they came to be in this realm that we inhabit from the fallen, right? The same thing with the Vedics, in my opinion. They're getting their information about all this stuff. There's a lot of really interesting stuff. I believe there's even context in these other religions that the Bible doesn't have, because the Bible almost feels like this is what they need to know. Because if it was the story of everything, it would be a never-ending book, right? We'd have to carry it around on an 18-wheeler, a flatbed, to bring it from one place to another, and then nobody would ever get through it. So it's like the story of what they need to know in order to arm themselves while they're in this realm. But everybody else is telling stuff with a little bit more. So there's some things that I think like the Vedics might actually have right about shit that took place.
Also keep in mind, I mean, I think it was Constantine, the dude who like put together the Bible that as we know it. They put together, like there's a lot of truth to like religion being a control structure, and they put the parts that they wanted to keep this as a cohesive religion. There are extra canonical books, and you need to read through them and check them out to see if you think that they would belong in this canon, but there certainly are things left out. There's weird translations of stuff that matters more than you'd say. I'm just playing devil's advocate for what the Bible is as we know it. But still, even so, after it's like still compiled and like whittled down, books taken out and put in this form, it still has more truth than most of these religions. It's a very odd thing to think about.
The thing that I think gets me the most is like it all hinges on one really important detail. The Bible talks about these angels falling, a third of them falling. And then Enoch goes into more detail about the nature of it and what they did when they fell. And then these other religions are telling a story about a pantheon of gods. And in Enoch, it's talking about how they are terrible, right? Their children are destroying the land. They're eating human beings. They're doing all this terrible shit. These fallen angels are accepting this veneration and this worship. And to me, I go, oh, they're talking about the same characters. It's just that one book is coming from the POV of these fallen entities, and the other one is coming from the POV of, or at least the standpoint of, these entities are fallen. So I think a lot of them are telling the same stories. That's why I think there's so much overlap, but you're getting something fun. This is where, within spiritual lies and deception, there's this methodology that's used where it's like, you're going to tell people 10 things. 9 of them will be the truth. And once you get to the 9th truth, they're willing to trust you and they're willing to believe you. That's when you finally get them with that one lie. And I think that one lie is infamously the nature of these entities. And so, like I said, I think it's the same entities that you'll see in Sumer. It's the same entities that you'll see in the Greek pantheon. It's the same entities, and with some variation. I mean, like if a third of them fell, I think, is it Jasher, or I forget which book has their count at like 200. I don't know if that's actually accurate. You have to take these extra canonical books with a grain of salt, but you've got a great deal of entities that have fallen. And then all of these beget like offspring one way or the other, whether you believe they had sex with human beings or this was through some sort of genetic manipulation. So now the numbers become unmanageable and the variation becomes incredible. And so through that lens, it accounts for every strange aberration that you come across in mythology. Honestly, we've gotten so schizo. I'm to the point where I'm like, yeah, satyrs, 100% real. You have a precedent for Baphomet, being this entity. If you take it at face value and you go, okay, maybe there was a spiritual entity of some sort that was part man, part goat. You have these cherubim that have the face of an oxen, the face of a lion, the face of a man, and the face of, I forget what the hell it is. But there's, as they describe the angels, so much variation in them, especially having to do with animals. If these things had offspring and they looked anything like them, then there's your answer for all these strange things.
Well, if we get super reductionist and we go with like what the Bible is kind of explaining to people, so I understand like if you were to interpret a large portion of it almost as a farmer's almanac, which equates to all of the different astrological processions and sort of like formulas that get baked into that too. But it also seems pretty straightforward that there's going to be an antichrist first, and then you get the second coming sometime after that, right? Like there's a very like linear progression to that, and the antichrist is the one that promises you these sort of things of like immortality or being like a god. Like that promise essentially comes from the direction of antichrist. And I always wonder, is it a little bit too obvious? Because imagine you can count cards and you're in Vegas and you're playing blackjack. Like, when they flip that card, like ignore that card because you want the card that's behind it. Like you're waiting for the ace or the face card, right? If they just flip the 9, you're like, no, I know that there's some face cards buried under there. I'm just going to hold back, let you get rid of that 9, and I'll take that next face card. So like, is it too obvious that you don't accept the first god that comes up? If it's Elon Musk and he's like, you can upload your consciousness to your Cybertruck and live forever, like that would be the first version of the Antichrist. But then does that mean that like you jump on the next one? Because there's not really anything that explains that there's going to be two Antichrists. There's going to be three Antichrists, and then there's going to be the second coming. It almost seems that one Antichrist and then whoever purports to be the next Jesus is going to be the real one. I said that this is overly reductionist.
No, I understand that, and it's something that I gave a lot of pushback to, like Paul Stobbs or JT follows JC on, because they're big, like that. Well, they're not big, but they like to talk about this thing called the little season. Have you heard about that?
Right, like the post millennial or post messianic age, where it states that like Jesus already, like the Antichrist came and went, Jesus came and went, and we're sort of like mom never picked us up from the soccer match, and we're just like waiting for mom to show up, and she's not coming.
It's a great way
we're
of
that,
describing
like, that leftover generation, and they have some good arguments as to why that is a possibility. And I go back and forth. I'm like, nah, I don't think so, because there's things in the Bible that say that should have happened, and it would have been pretty obvious if it did. But
Like what? Like what are some things that haven't happened yet?
Well, number one, I mean, just like the flattening of like all the mountains. That's in the Book of Revelation. Like every mountain is flattened. There's mountains.
Also, animals should be like, we should be able to talk to them, and basically they shouldn't be tearing apart each other. This idea that like the lion will finally lay with the lamb, like they should be peaceful amongst one another. We're not seeing any of that. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, that's right. The wolf. That's fucking
that's a
Mandela effect,
dog. How dare you? Yeah,
I know.
The flattening of the mountains is a rough one though, because if you were to take like a flat edge ruler and look at that under a microscope, depending on how far you zoom in, you can see ridges on even that. So I mean, if you were to look at a mountain range, if you zoom out far enough, it eventually becomes a straight line, right? Especially on a flat Earth.
I would imagine, because these things are like a tale of what's to come. These are things that matter from our perspective, as you know.
One of the big ones that Ed maybe brings up that I tend to really agree with is like, okay, Jesus came back, ruled for 1,000 years with a rod of iron, and we have not one shred of evidence that he was here before.
Explain Donald Trump then.
You can't. Exactly. Whatever.
And that's the problem.
The point. But the point I'm making is that like, this is why I take exception with that sort of theory, because I'm like, all right, well, what happens? Let's say you're right, or let's say you're wrong, and let's say Jesus does come back, and people who are saying this is we're in the little season, but things play out the way they're supposed to in the Book of Revelation, they're going to look up and turn away. It's a big moment, right? Because like I think that when this happens, when it happens, we're all going to have a decision to make right there. Boom. Like you see this thing in the sky, and Joe Rogan even just brought it up to that guy, Wes Huff. He's like, man, in today's day and age, if Jesus comes back, we're talking about drones in the sky. We're talking about blue beam. We're talking about all kinds of other government psyops. How would you know? And it's a great question. So Paul Stobbs said it, JT said it, and I say it as well. Like, I don't know really when this plays out, because it does look fairly obvious. Like, all right, if I just hold my hand, I know that the dealer's going to bust because he's already played too many cards, and I'm watching it. But how do you really know? How do you really know when you're presented with it? And I think it's just like, hey, you got to have a relationship with the guy. Like you'll know the dude when you see him, that sort of a thing. So
yeah, there are a lot of the little season shit resonates with me too, because it's like there are times when, and I'd be interested to know if you feel this way, Thomas. It's like, as a conspiracy theorist, you're looking for one thing or another, and it seems that sometimes they're showing you their hand, and we get into that, whether it's like revelation of the method. Is this to free them of some sort of karmic consequence? Is this so that you take part in their sin if they're doing this evil thing, and now you know that it's happening? But there are things that feel like purposeful breadcrumbs, right? I mean, we were able to make like 2 or 3 episodes about the likelihood that Donald Trump was going to survive a headshot. Now, is that because Top and I are psychics or something? Like, no, it's just that we were able to see that there were some things that were happening around him that were like Antichrist centric, and they were very obvious. And so we figured, well, if this is truly what we're seeing, then one of the things we might expect to see in the future is him survive a headshot. So of course, when the headshot happens, we end up going on like tinfoil hat and saying the opposite. Now, we could have gotten on there and said, he's definitively the Antichrist. Look, here's the proof is in the pudding. But it felt theatrical. It felt fake. And it felt like one of those things where they're like trying to get people like us, unhinged schizos, but also critical thinkers who aren't willing to take the status quo's explanation for things as gospel. And so it feels like sometimes they just do these things to make us like, okay, there's conspiracy theorists. Let's give them some conspiracy to chew on, right? That's like cognitive infiltration, like the Cass Sunstein kind of a deal.
They just want to mess with schizos every once in a while.
It could be that, but I mean, look, you have that precedent for like Cass Sunstein joining the Obama administration, writing that paper on like cognitive infiltration. This idea that like these intelligence agencies do see that there's a lot of noticers out there, and look, they characterize them in a distasteful way, right? These people are just bad for democracy and they're bad for America and yada yada. So what they do is they want to infiltrate the movement and then steer it one way or another that's beneficial to them. But eventually you got to ask yourself, are you the smartest banana in the bunch, or are they laying shit that's there? It's meant for the average person to miss, but the slightly critical thinker to catch. And sometimes I feel like they're patronizing you. Like you're the slightly critical thinker. You think you're smarter than you are.
In the UFO community, I mean, we know that they do this. Like they're like, yeah, we just fucking laid this stuff out there and we wanted this guy to spread this information. And then he did, and they're like, perfect. Now we have UFO culture that's all kinds of messed up and nobody knows if they're coming or going. So
right.
Yeah,
Milton William Cooper famously is one of those people that was like at the forefront of ufology and then was like, oh yeah, by the way, I also work for naval intelligence specifically to release this kind of stuff. But trust me when I say like that was the bunk stuff and here's the real stuff. And I almost think that trend kind of exists today. I would put one other option out there too. You've got this planned like chess procedure where they're just trying to do misdirection and make this move while you're looking over here. There's also like the synchro mystic aspect of it. But I think that also, what if it's like the time isn't linear, like you guys were talking about, almost like a medieval Wheel of Fortune aspect, where it just keeps going through the same movements, like the needle drops, right? And it's on the same record in the same spot. It just depends on which groove you're currently in, but it keeps like replaying over and over again. But with the Donald Trump headshot, this, in my mind, this was clearly a King Kill 33 ritual, the same type that took JFK out in Dealey Plaza, like this Masonic James Shelby Downard style ritual.
Right, he's got the blood on his right ear, right hand, right foot. He's got his shoe off.
But hear me out. I think that they're tweaking the formula a little bit because like this isn't your grandpa's King Kill 33 ritual. They had this like old shoe shine, like elbow grease version of it. But now we've gotten sophisticated to where they can take the shot at Trump and Trump does all the theatrics and he's bleeding and oh my God, there was assassination attempt on the president. But what really happened, like what actually happened in the real reality that we were existing, that took Joe Biden out, bro. That was a headshot that hit Donald Trump, but it took out Joe Biden. And if you think about it, right before that happened, there was sort of rumors that like, will he, won't he, will he just like give Kamala sort of the reins to the White House? Will he step down? But it would have been seen as this huge moment of weakness. And it would have almost like, that's exactly what the King Kill ritual is. It's when you want to transfer power from one to another without losing any in that process. So the only way for Joe to have actually taken a step back without showing just complete weakness was to show the strength of this other person that actually takes the headshot.
Yeah.
But the death, the actual sacrificial ritual is sort of transferred onto the old guy on his way out. It's the same King Kill ritual. It's the same exact motions that everything goes through. It's just that now when, dude gets hit with the arrow, the dude on that side dies. There's still a transference. Like everything went through the same motions, but it's almost like, what is it? The JHW 1018. Well, now this is the 1019. Like they've just tweaked the formula a little bit. Like we got the K2 version of a JFK assassination.
I love that. And I think that really resonates with me. There's this. So, okay. There's a lot of things about Trump, right, that are very strange, like this idea that of the Ingersoll Lockwood books, and I know people beat those things to death, but I do think they're worth mentioning, and especially on this concept of like time, right, and we're talking about whether or not time's linear or this and that. I don't think that is indicative of like Donald Trump being a time traveler, right? I also don't think that like his uncle working at or being an MIT and then being recruited by the FBI to go through Nikola Tesla's writings and shit like that and cleaning out his office after he died and then reporting to the FBI. I don't think that is also like, I don't know. It's all built in, right? You also have like all the strange shit that's going on with Donald Trump and Biff Tannen or whatever his name is.
You said you don't think, but you don't think what? Did it happen or that there's any modern day relevance to it have happened?
No, I don't think I think it's theater to lock us into this like time traveling thing. I don't think this motherfucker traveled time. I don't even really believe that the Ingersoll Lockwood books came out in the late 1800s and just somehow flew under the radar. Like, I just don't, I know that the guy seems to be a real guy and he wrote other books, right? 1900 or The Last President and The Marvelous Underground Journey of Little Baron Trump and all this other shit. But like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem, I can't verify it that it was out back then. So I have no way to, and then like, I don't know. It just feels like everything between him and Elon here. I want to show you this real quick. I'm going to present something. So this was just the other day. We have Elon here. Let's share this. And this is actually a little bit of a bummer, not a bummer, but it's just like whenever you see something you've been harping on and then all of a sudden it goes viral. So are we pulled up on the screen? Okay. I'm just going to read this lady's tweet. It says, okay, it's really long. I'm going to read a little bit of it. So let me get this straight. Nikola Tesla dies, and the only person allowed access to his safe, the one containing all his most secret inventions, is John G. Trump, the brilliant MIT scientist, and oh yeah, Donald Trump's uncle, who conveniently says nothing to see here while the government quietly packs up Tesla's life. Then she goes on, oh my God, here, this feels like she's been watching our show. 1958, the episode of Trackdown. It features a con man named Walter Trump selling a magic wall to save people from the end of the world, which is true. 1958, a series called Trackdown. The episode was called End of the World. And a con man comes to town named Trump, and he has to build a wall to save everybody. So, I mean, and then she goes on to talk about the Ingersoll Lockwood books. I swear to God, this bitch is watching our show. Werner von Braun, the father of rocket science. He's talking about Elon Musk colonizing Mars in that Werner von Braun book. This is actually uncanny. I swear to God, she's been. So it doesn't matter, right? What matters is this. Elon Musk. Just a coincidence. Winky face. I recognize that is done in such a way. Elon Musk does this. He will entertain a topic that is frivolous and off bounds for the average person, and then you will watch that topic organically bloom into life, into a much larger conversation. Almost want to say, mark my words, by the end of the year, this will be common knowledge. And I think there's so much with him and Elon and QAnon and fucking Tesla and the Ingersoll Lockwood books. I cannot look at this through any other lens but incredible theater. It's incredible theater. It's beautiful.
I think it's obvious for Elon because he ostensibly puts himself at the center of attention. Like, think about how many other companies, these massive, like global conglomerates, don't really have a front man. They don't have a human mascot that's like, this is me, this brand is me, and look, here's my opinions. Almost every other, like, who's the human mascot for Ford or Chevy or Mitsubishi or Acura or any of them? None of them have that, right? Who's the one person that like represents NASA? I guess you could make an argument for Virgin Galactic, which would be Branson. He's also sort of like one of these personalities, but
not to that
Elon
level.
Specifically puts himself in the center of attention, and it almost reminds me of like a king that is like inviting all the poor and the paupers to like be in their presence. But if you don't kind of like give your wink and your nod, then you're sort of showing that you're not really invited to that party. And I think that Elon having an opinion on anything on his own social network, like even his workers, even the AI that is now replacing his workers, even it knows well enough that, oh man, if Elon gave this some attention, we better give some of that attention back. We better make sure that people see this and they interact with it, because otherwise the king gets pissed off in his own kingdom.
He's the king. We spoke about this with Owen Benjamin. He's the king, but he seems like he's not content with that role, and he wants the role of the almost like the jester or the fool. It seems that he wants to play the hero, but he is stuck as the king. And you just can't do these things because, like you're saying, like you could see the people on Twitter that have to be loyal to him because he's basically made them, he's crowned them. So here's a bad opinion. and they're all like, shit, I can't disagree with them, so everybody claps anyway. You can never be the jester and speak the truth if everybody around you is beholden to you. And that's kind of what he's built there. And it's an interesting dynamic.
Well, that's even if you take him for being genuine in the ways that he's like. Shout out to Chad Warren in the chat. Says it doesn't seem possible Elon could be on Twitter all the time while also running all his companies. Yes,
Well,
I mean,
yeah, we have an example
Right.
of that. Right? So
we've been beating that to death, though, right? It's like the boring company, Starlink, Twitter, SpaceX, all these fucking different things. And on top of it, he's ranked like number 1 or number 2 in Diablo. And I've seen somebody say
the real deal. Like we have somebody like that we can look at that runs their company as the face of the company. And Donald Trump in a way, yes, but he's not necessarily, he's like delegating. But Dana White runs the UFC and he is the face of this. He's a personality.
yeah.
That dude is fucking busy. That's just one company. This guy has like 7.
And you could tell when Dana talks, you're like, this dude is busy. He's like,
He's tired.
You know
You
what
don't
I
have time
mean?
for your shit. Yeah,
Right.
Elon Musk is talking all slow. He's wasting time on Twitter Spaces. He's getting ratioed by, green frog accounts. It's like, what are you doing, dog?
yeah. And to RGZ Max point, he says, but I'm sure he has a couple of AI personalities. I believe that's exactly what we're seeing right now. There's a character named Aiden something,
Adrian.
or Adrian rather, on X. It sounds exactly like him, but the cadence is like slightly different, only in that it's faster, and somehow that's indicative of it not being Elon Musk. I'm like, either it is Elon Musk or he's just got an AI. He's got an Ultron to his Tony Stark, And that's the other thing too, is like I recognize the theater of that too. Built within the Avengers series is this, like Elon Musk is playing the Tony Stark of the Avengers right now. You have this billionaire playboy philanthropist, and at one point, during the Stark Expo in the second movie, and X is really big. For some reason, it's capitalized, it's highlighted amongst all the other words. When he lands on stage in his Iron Man suit, he does his whole speech. He steps off stage. The first person he talks to is Elon Musk making a cameo. They said that they modeled Tony after Elon. You could actually look that up. That's just common knowledge. You're like, yeah, we wanted him to have, which is strange because if you listen to Tony Stark, he doesn't sound anything like fucking Elon. And then there's also in the movie Age of Ultron where he's talking about creating a suit of armor around the entire world, right? That's what the AI is supposed to be. And you look in the background, and what is it? It's a web of satellites encompassing the planet, all interconnected, just like what? Starlink, you know what I mean? So it's like there seems to be some way in which even the Marvel films have like kind of like right now we have the Avengers of conspiracy theories. This is something that I've been talking about for a while. So there are certain topics that are along party lines, whatever the Democrats want, whatever the Republican wants. But you can almost look at conspiracy theorists like they're a separate party. And we have our own topics of interest, right? Whether it's like fluoride in the water, chemtrails in the sky, you
Who's the
name it. We've
president?
got our things that we talk about.
The president
And-
would be like Alex Jones, right?
Well, all right. Yeah. So we have, I don't know, Alex Jones might be like the Hulk or something because he's like, and I really enjoy that about him. But we have these characters that aren't really part of the Trump administration, but are all on that side, the side that we want, the side that's more refreshing to the shit that we've been succumbing to for the past, however many administrations. And it's like you have Trump, right? Trump is obviously QAnon. He's built into the QAnon thing. He's going to save the children. He also got his political conversation started by being a, what would you call it? Birth certificate denier, whatever. Obama's birth
Hillary
certificate.
Clinton. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have Joe Rogan, who's, ostracized and demonized by the mainstream media, only to come out successful and on top. But his entire thing was the pandemic and the lockdowns. And that's really his bag. You have RFK. He's talking about taking the fluoride out of the water. He's talking about, inoculations being bad and causing all these different diseases and shit. Something that's been, true to conspiracy theorists' heart for a long time, fear about inoculations. And then you have Tucker Carlson too. Tucker Carlson's talking about the Nephilim. He's talking about demonic attacks in his sleep. He's talking about these UFOs and how there's a spiritual nature to them. You have like sort of this meeting of them. Obviously, you have Alex Jones. He's in his heyday right now, and he's literally conspiracy daddy. There are all these people that are like kind of becoming the main people that we focus on the world stage, and they're all representing shit for conspiracy theorists. And that sounds like it's good, right? But to me, it feels like it's meant to let our guard down. Like we go like, they've got it covered. Even Elon Musk, right after we did Brohemian Grove, where you gave an awesome talk on, I don't want to say it, I don't want to get, but you know what you gave a talk on.
Where you can
And
say
then-
adrenochrome.
We can say adrenochrome? Okay.
Next. Yeah.
So you gave us a talk on adrenochrome, and then we got on stage and we did a presentation on we did a podcast on Pizzagate. And then like 2 days later, Elon Musk retweeted the fact that John Podesta's homie, who ran cover for the Pizzagate thing and was outspoken denial about it, he just got caught abusing children. And Elon Musk retweets it. And it's literally an article that says John Podesta, Pizzagate, child abuse. And Elon Musk retweets it. I mean, there are so many elements that include the things that we care about that are not being represented. It feels like we're meant to let our guard down and let these motherfuckers, do the legwork for us or something like that. All of it just feels too strange to me. I mean, it's a great time to be a conspiracy theorist, but I don't believe a fucking lick of it, dude.
Well, I have a similar take on Epstein getting taken down. That was a way of making people think like, oh, someone's got this under wraps. P. Diddy getting taken down. But I guess maybe even better example is the Tim Ballard movie, the Sound of Freedom, I think. So this movie comes out at like a fever pitch of when everyone's like, oh my God, they're stealing the children. What are we going to do about this? And then all you have to do is watch the movie and you get to go through this catharsis. You get to be like, oh my God, thank God that Jim Caviezel is taking care of this for us. He's saving the kids. Like this is being sorted out. We can go ahead and focus on the next thing. Meanwhile, like nothing's actually happened on that front. A movie came out and a dead guy, may or may not have been dead, just gets to escape out into like his other island, like island option B. And so, yeah, I think that what you're describing is sort of like that cathartic release where as long as you've got the theater, like the theatrical version of it, the same thing where someone goes and watches a movie of an action hero. Now they don't feel like they have to do anything heroic because, Arnold Schwarzenegger's got it or whoever the hell is that proxy that they got to like vicariously live through.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's what we're being subjected to. It's kind of like bread and circus that's now left the silver screen and is meant to be interpreted as real life. And I think it is to do exactly that. It's to quell you or to lure you into a false sense of security. Chad says Trump has big ties to Epstein. That's who ran the model contest where he found America. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at Trump as your hero, I think that Thomas is correct. It is we just watched the Kingmaker ceremony, right? We just watched the Kingmaker ritual, and then they just here's another good piece of theater. We have New Year's Eve, and Elon Musk is spiraling on Twitter. He's getting ratioed. He's banning people. I think that was when all the groypers got banned. They got their blue check marks removed.
What's a groyper? You have to explain what that
Dude,
word
I don't
means.
even really know. It's a Nick Fuentes fan.
Man. No, yeah, it's just it's an America Firster, like somebody that listens to Nick Fuentes. They have some cool opinions, but they kind of lionize one person a little too much, and then they get a little bit weird and ideological, and they also don't have much life experience. So
these are Swifties for Nick Fuentes. That's what a groyper is.
Great way of putting it.
Is it supposed to sound like a groper, or is that?
I don't know. I don't even I don't understand it. I try not to understand it. It's beneath me. So, but he bans all these people and takes away Nick Fuentes' blue check, and he's a big account, so that ruffles some feathers. And basically he's just arguing and he's getting ratioed over and over again. Now this is happening on New Year's Eve while he sat next to Donald Trump, who's just having a good time. These two are supposed to be having a good time, doing their media rounds. It's it's Trump time, baby. And instead, Elon Musk is just freaking out, right? What happens the next morning? Cybertruck representing Elon Musk is a dumpster fire right outside of Trump Towers, gold and glistening and without any damage to it. And it's almost like it's meant to be a picturesque representation of like the thing that happened the night before. And I'm looking at that.
Someone forgot the thermite. That's all I'm saying. Somebody forgot to plant the thermite on the inside.
And then, of course, this whole thing, by the way, it plugs into like the drone situation and this situation. And it just becomes, and that is, by the way, the beginning of the kickoff to like PSYOP season, where we've just been like inundated. These past 13 days have been a blur. I can't even look at what's going on because I can't pick. It's all so exciting that it's like, you go and you have like too many options and you can't pick what you want to eat. It's like that. Like I want to look at these things, but there's so many of them going on. But I just see that as like, that is you somehow took the events of the night before and made them one of the most iconic photos of our time, really, right? I mean, Top Gun, as far as putting it on a shirt, says PSYOP season. It's a banger shirt. Even the picture of the flaming Cybertruck was like, I need that blown up and on my wall. It was such a great
At
picture.
toplobster.com, right?
That's right, toplobster.com, baby. You go and get your PSYOP season shirt and look like a real killer out in public. But I don't know if people are going to be too pumped about what you're wearing, but you'll be pumped about it. Yeah, it's just
a little secret. Doesn't fucking matter what they think.
Doesn't fucking matter. Nick is a homo for twink cat boys. I love cats, and he does not resonate with me. I'm also a twink. So I don't know, man. It's just like, we're in the swing of things. It feels too much like from beginning to end, everything to do with Donald Trump's arc. Even if you just look at it on its face, it's like you have a guy who is a good president, but sissies can't stand his rhetoric. And then you watch him get wrongly persecuted and everything falls apart. Nothing holds water. It all ends up not being true, but you still watch this guy go through the gambit of all these accusations and everything. And if you're smart and you're paying attention, you're like, look, he's talking about grabbing pussies, but the economy's good and the legislation is good. And, they're really levying a bunch of false shit against him. And then you watch him get taken out of power, yada, yada, yada. By the way, a dude who wrote The Art of the Comeback does what? Takes a bullet to the ear and makes one of the most theatrical comebacks. This is fucking wrestling, right? It's pro wrestling. By the way,
you know something crazy kind of came across my table yesterday or the day before. So the inauguration is on the 20th, and today is, so that's a week from today.
Wow.
Yeah, but from the 17th culminating to the 21st being the most evident, there's like a huge planetary alignment where like 3 or 4 planets will be evidently aligned in the sky. So I'm just like, man, just more weird astrological shit that coincides with big geopolitical events on this earth. I just have I don't know what it means, but I have my eye out for some weird shit going on. It lines up too weird.
I mean, look, everything we just said, right, about this whole Art of the Comeback thing, the guy makes he's also the hero of QAnon. You're talking about the Sound of Freedom or whatever. It's like, if that shit ever gets resurrected, which I think it will, I think we will end up seeing the second act of like all the Q shit, all the Epstein Island shit. I think they've tucked it away and they're waiting to toss it out as really excellent theater. And I don't know if we're going to see that soon or not, but I can't look at it these days any other way, dude. We're just being subjected to theater and ritual because within us is this innate storytelling mechanism. I think it's there for a reason.
Let me start winding us down a little bit too with one final question about time, because time became a topic we were getting into. Are we literally living in end times? Like, do you think that we are going to see between the three of us in the next 30 years or so the end of time? Or is that also just this abstract concept that doesn't really have any meaning because that's a linear thing?
Top, you could take this one.
Yeah, it's a hard question. Are we living in? I think every generation's felt like they're living in the end times, but what's unique to our generation is that a lot of the things, well, I mean, biblically, a lot of the table is set as far as like, so a good, for instance, like when you're reading the Bible and it's like, well, when Jesus comes back, everybody's going to see it simultaneously. And you're like, well, if the earth's flat, maybe we'll see a real big Jesus and everyone could kind of see him across the whole world. Yeah, but what if we had cell phones? So this is our generation. So that kind of prophecy is right there for you, that is saying that it's possible. But there's also a possibility where it's every single generation has felt this way. And it could just be another false start. What I do know for sure is that we are led to believe by the powers that be that this is the end generation. This is the last, this is the final generation. So whether it's legitimate or not, somebody has went through a painstaking process to make us think so. So take that however you'd like. I don't know. But what was the main question?
Well, that is, are we in the end times? And I think going what you're saying, because one of my other fascinations, I don't know how much you've gotten into Mormonism. I know you did a show with my good friend Heidi Love. Shout out.
Yeah, great show. She has great content.
She has got like months worth of content on this. But one of the things that I'm the most fascinated about with the Mormon religion is that if you look into the early days of the early 1800s, when it first was getting its start, they were not talking about end times. Like it'll happen in our lifetime, or it'll happen in the next 3 or 4 decades. They were saying like this October, this October of this year is when the Antichrist comes, and we all need to pool our resources. And they did. They like squirreled away resources and put together armies, and they remained like a tight-knit group. But then October came and went, and it didn't happen. And they started pushing it out. Then it was like, oh, next October. And then it was like, okay, well, now the end times is in 2 years from now. But it's fascinating to see like a historical record of a large group of people that were saying it's like, it's this year or it's next year. They weren't talking about some vague terms of like lifetime. Now, after, making the wrong calls for about 2 centuries, now I think everyone's a little bit more vague about it. And they just say like the end times are upon us, which might be your great, great, great grandkids or beyond. It's not really specific enough.
Well,
but there are some people that truly believe that it's going to happen in their lifetime.
You can also look at it this way. So that's just one religion and one sect of religious people, which is really easy to get into that echo chamber. I'm in an echo chamber on Twitter. It's the N-word echo chamber, but that's not the point. Listen,
what's the N-word?
Don't worry about
Nephilim?
it. Actually, yes. Nephilim is going to be the N-word of the spiritual realm. We've already decided that. Did you see on X they had they're going to be deboosting people according to like negative what was it? Not like negative engagement or negative language. Elon Musk wants everything to be positive, the King's declared, and one of the prerequisites of negative language is speaking about the Nephilim, and that sort of conspiracy. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying is that's a very small group of people, and they're in an echo chamber. Right now, we have all eyes on 2030, the year 2030. You have Project 2030 going on. You have Helena Blavatsky saying that Jesus Christ will return in the year 2025. Besides all of the other
Trump.
Donald Trump coming in, he's playing this weird antichrist role. They have the red heifers in Israel that just went away. They probably already burned them and sanctified the tools that they need to erect this temple.
They've been recast as black mermaids at this point, actually.
But basically what's going on here is that it's not one religion or one group of people that is like preparing for the next couple of years. I can't give you an exact date, but in 2025, it feels like closer than ever because everybody is converging on a certain time frame. And it looks like right around 2030. Like the elites needed to get whatever the fuck they needed to get done by 2030. That's why they pushed through COVID. That's why they pushed through the vaccine. We had Operation Warp Speed, and everything has been breakneck speed, PSYOP season, right? So we're moving towards something real fast. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is, but the people who are moving towards it think that it's going to happen. That's all. That's really the best that I can tell you. It's not just one religion. It's not just one group of crazy people in a compound. It's pretty much the entire world, or at least the entire world of powers that be. And they're separate entities, all kind of doing shit that looks a lot like the end times. So I don't know.
And also to your point,
we're lucky enough to have been, I think all 3 of us lived through the last 3 major end times, which was Y2K, 2012, and now 2025, 2030,
Still
God
kicking,
willing.
baby. Still kicking. Well, to your point earlier about Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses did the same thing a lot. I think it was like they predicted the end of the world like 22 times or something like that. And most of that was in the early 1900s. And then they kind of also became very vague about it.
Well, Y2K and 2012 are sort of like these fringe ideas. So 2012 like goes back to the Mayan calendar, right? There's no extension of the Mayan calendar. Okay, that's fine, but that's still geographical, and it's kind of like the Mayan culture. Y2K was a computer error. It was one of these things that swept the world, and we're like, well, what happens when the fucking clocks go? Nobody knew. This is like biblical precedent, and this is global. This is like Christianity is not a small thing. This is a global idea. You have the Jews involved with this stuff. There's Satanists certainly looking at this stuff. Whatever the governments, whatever their spiritual alignment is, they're making moves at this as well. So it's not just like one like computer error. It's not one.
Well, no, you mentioned Helena Blavatsky citing 2025 or 2030, but like, is there actual biblical precedent somewhere that talks about 2025 or 2030?
If you talk to there's so this is an interpretation of biblical text. It's called Messiah 2030. And if you look it up, it's very compelling. Some theologians do have some bones to pick with it. We did talk to Ed Mabry, who we were introduced to through Tinfoil Hat Podcast, and now he does the Book of Revelation series with us. We're like on episode 23 or something like that, and he watched it, and he was like, honestly, it was really good, and I don't have much of a bone to pick with it at all. There are some small things, but ultimately what they've done is they've identified, and I would argue pretty compellingly, that there are cycles that you can see in the Bible, and it's almost like it constantly points to itself every so many like stories or something. It'll kind of flip back and talk about the same time period. So there's like a code within it. I only watched the first hour of it. It's pretty long, and I was blown away. It's really, really interesting, but I can't really speak for it because I haven't watched the whole thing. So there are those who have disseminated through the Bible that 2030 is the time. But so you just talked about Blavatsky. She predicted there was going to be a new age, which is not unheard of, right? It's the idea of the age of Aquarius. A lot of kind of people in the occult space, that we now reference to, predicted that we were coming to the age of Aquarius at some point. In fact, even if you go back and watch like the old Zeitgeist thing, it was like, what's coming next is the age of Aquarius.
That was heavily debated too. Some people think age of Aquarius doesn't happen until like the year like 2600 or something.
Yeah, so it is something that's debated, but they do have 2025 as being relevant. And Alice Bailey also said that 2025 was going to be a new golden age. And then it was going to be marked by the return of Christ sometime after 2025, and that this would be the age of Aquarius. It's interesting because Trump keeps using that language, golden age. We're going into a golden age. That's what his presidency is going to be. I just think that that's kind of fun. But you have Baba Vanga also, by the way, who... And this is something that we've been looking at, this idea of like disclosure on the horizon.
Pull up what I shared. It's just to show what it says there. Keep going, Dave.
So Baba Vanga, who's like this kind of like babushka character. What does it say? Donald Trump, the dawn of America's golden age. And that's the second time he's used that language.
I think it's not just a second. He's used this a bunch of times. So this is like verbiage that's
he does like gold.
He does like gold, baby. So Baba Vanga, she's kind of this old babushka lady. She was blind. She was a clairvoyant, a really famous psychic. She predicted a number of things, 9/11, the death of Princess Diana, even her own death down to the day she was able to predict. And she predicted that in 2025, we were going to have alien contact with, if you've been watching this whole disclosure thing, and that's a whole nother, bag of worms to get into. But I do think that a lot of things are pointing to 2025. To Top's point, it's much more than like a Y2K thing. Y2K was like, we have, the date is going to there's going to be a lot of zeros, I think, was like,
it was a clerical error.
It was a clerical thing. They thought they were going to lose all the data in digital form. And then of course the Mayan calendar really was only backed by our interpretation of the Mayan calendar. That was pretty much it. But now we are on the cusp. Like you have this character Cliff High, who I'm not going to really beat anybody's ear with it, but he has an AI that has an ability to scrape the data off the internet and make predictions based off of it. It predicted that 2025 was going to be this cusp of a moment where we're going to be introduced to aliens, UFOs, and that was going to lead to sci-fi world. That's what Cliff High talks about. And that to me sounds like a new age, right? So I think there's a lot of things that are pointing to this moment. So, all right, just to finally give you a short answer, are we going to see the end of time within our lifetime? I think we're going to see something really incredible over the next 1 year. And I think it's going to be about the end of time. The only thing that's yet to be seen is, are they making us believe that we're at this end of time event? Or is this a genuine end of days event? Because I do recognize that there's an effort to seemingly manufacture biblical prophecy. So I can kind of go either way on this. But what I will think, I do think I'll stand firm on the idea is we're going to see some fucking really monumental shit happening in this next year that David, conspiracy theorists are going to be checking off the bingo sheets.
The answer either way is that, like, are you going to see the end of time? If you believe biblically, like read the book of Revelation. It's really interesting. The apocalyptic stuff is fun, but it doesn't describe an end of times. It just talks about a new start. There still will be humanity as we know it existing. The earth will still be the way it is in some form or fashion, but it'll be different. So, like, will everybody die? No, I don't know. Everyone's not going to die. It's going to be weird times. But on the other side of it is going to be, well, if you believe in the traditional book of Revelation, then you'll be under the reign of Christ. This is a 1,000-year reign of Christ where people will be human beings. But, the conditions around us will be a lot better. And even that still falls after 1,000 years when presented with the alternative where Satan is loose for a little season. Still, like most of the people go like, yeah, we choose Satan because
we're
you're- it's-
retarded.
Oh, no, I mean you're presented with a world now where like, okay, you want a king? I'll give you this is every single time. You want a king, you want a ruler, like you want a strong man, you want a Donald Trump, you want an Adolf Hitler, I'll fucking give him to you. And when you get him, it's not what you wanted. Because you have to make it's just about making the choice yourself, but I digress. So it's not the end. It's just like this next thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're not going to see the end of time. But I do think that we're just there. I think it is big ass paradigm shift. And I think that if Donald Trump is truly the Antichrist, what you'll end up seeing is like we're going to enter a really nice period for the next like 3.5 years. And it's going to crush. It's going to be really cool. The economy is going to be great. I think that people like us, right, as the world gets stranger, more people will be looking to us for, not only entertainment, but also to help them make sense of this. It's not like we have a chokehold on the truth. Everybody's sitting here on this screen, but I think we've got a little bit better of an idea than the average person. So it'll be good. It'll be good for business. But during that time,
We're gonna
don't stop being a conspiracy
ton of-
theorist.
We're gonna sell a bunch of what's it called? Fucking Guess Who boards, which is how
We're
we
going to
started
sell
the
so many
show.
Guess Who boards.
Yeah,
Can we
that
te-
is how we started. Yeah, and I guess I don't want to run this too long for you
No.
guys.
Can I just give the audience a quick idea about it? I would love to
Yeah,
get
please.
feedback from people
Full
in the
circle,
audience.
baby. We're professionals. This is what
That's
we
right.
do.
That's right. In the chat, sound off, and also like just after the fact, please give us some feedback about this. A version of Guess Who? Can you guess who? That's a mystery. But instead of just like regular people, it's all kinds of conspiracy characters. Like, has your character been sued by the families of the victims of Sandy Hook? And you go, no, and then you flip down Alex Jones. You know what I mean? Or like have some other characters in there, Rothschilds and such. If you guys
Has
would
your-
love a
Has your
conspiracy.
character been in contact with some kind of spiritual entity and you go, yeah, and then they don't flip down any because it's like it's all of them. It's fucking all of them.
You got to ask better questions, baby. So if you guys would love a conspiracy Guess Who, sound off. If we get enough feedback, then we're going to do a sort of a startup for it and see if we can get it done. So, that's how we started the conversation because that's what we talked about.
That's something I've been wanting to do for a very long. I've got all the pieces lined up, but yeah, it's a considerable amount of work and money likely to like raise to get all those made. But I think that would be dope. I think that would be the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Has
and
your
it
character been in communication with the ascended spirits of ancient Atlanteans? And it's like, yes, and now like David Icke and a few others still have to stay up. Yeah.
This also lends itself to expansion packs. Like it's because it's basically going to be like a cardboard slide in that you can switch in and switch out. So I mean, the sky's the limit. You could do a conspiracy. You can do like comedians. You can do your favorite podcasters.
If you ask a good enough question, somebody will have to Google it. Like, shit, I don't know. Did this motherfucker talk to the spirits of Atlanteans, bro?
Well, the
So
rough
if
ones
you
are
guys
always
wanna
like,
see that, let us
was
know.
Your character like sued by the Sandy Hook families, and then you're like, yes, and then the game's over. Right?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Well,
like
if
the
you're good at
original one is
asking
like,
questions,
Is your guy black? It's like, damn it, it's the one guy.
there'll be no black people in this one.
It'll be its own expansion pack.
oh my god. Yeah, we'll
All
call
right,
it Black Ops.
I want to get your guys's takes on a whole bunch of different things. We'll do a kind of rapid fire, but I've got a little 10-second segment. Let me just play it first, and I'll explain the rules.
Hey, conspiracy buffs, I double dare you to take some PCP, the Paranormal Conspiracy Probe. On your marks, get set, and go!
Sweet. And right before the show, we all did PCP. It should be hitting you guys right about now to like line out perfectly. It's like the third line's roaring, you hit play and on the wall. So I would need to ask you guys, the rules are basically 1 to 10. You're going to rate the things that I say on how much you believe or give stock in it. So if I started out and just said Bigfoot, where you guys rate Bigfoot? And we'll start with Lobsta, and then we'll go to you, Raven. But like Bigfoot on a scale from 1 to 10,
10 being
and
most.
how real it is.
Yeah, 10. 10 being the most real, right?
Right.
10.
Yeah. Also 10.
So not even a question in your mind.
Not even
Nah,
a little
dog.
bit. Yeah. The only thing that I have a question about is like the nature of it, but I think I got a pretty good idea. So yeah, 10.
Okay. Bigfoot is multi-dimensional.
10.
Yeah, I'd say 10 too. 9 to 10. It's
All
probably
right, where are we at on shape-shifting reptilians?
Also 10.
10.
Is there anything? It's fine if everything's 10. I'm down for this. What about little gray aliens like the Greys?
100% 10. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
10.
they're biomechs, but yeah, 10.
How about mantis? The mantis race.
Yeah, this is gonna get old quick for the audience, but yeah, 10, definitely 10.
Okay. How? You just gonna hold up a permanent 10 and just take it down when we hit an area that we're not into. Okay, the Earth is a sphere, or it's a spherical shape.
Go ahead, Top.
That's a hard one. I don't think it's round, and I don't know if it's flat. I don't know. That's a question mark. So I guess.
So 5 is the perfect, like, on the fence.
That's what I was
don't
gonna.
know.
Yeah, we'll do a 5.
I was also gonna say 5
Actually,
because it's
no.
like
I'm gonna go 3. It's definitely not round. But it's not flat. It's something, but it's not round,
right.
for sure.
Yeah. I'm down with hollow cavernous Earth. And I'm leaning towards flat. I just know NASA lies, so very far from a sphere, but still, I would say a 5. I'll be in the middle.
Yeah, we already
close,
proved
RGZ.
you wrong. So we got non-tens in there. How about the concept of past lives? You know how people do like these past life regressions, and they were like, I was a king in this old, like, how much credit do you give in that practice? Like, do you think anyone's ever gotten a reading that was accurate, that they really were this past life regression?
You go ahead, Top.
Oh, that's a tough one. I would give that like a 7. And I know it's like anti-Christian of me, but I've heard some weird accounts. Some people say some stuff, and I'm just like, you know what, man, maybe. And we don't understand these rules. I don't understand how things go exactly. So it's a possibility.
I'm gonna go 8. That's just because that's where I wanted to land. But I think that these people are experiencing something. I can't definitively say that they absolutely lived this life before, but I don't know, like, the nature of the soul, if it ever fragments, if there's echoes left behind, if you're tapping into something, if you're channeling something. There's so many, we seemingly can remote view, we can channel, we can astral project, we can telepathy. There's all these different things that we seem to be able to do in anecdotal instances. If all of them were real, then that means there's a vast array of information that could pass through your psyche. Just because you have the spitting image of somebody else's life in your mind, does that mean definitively that you live that? What does that even mean? So I say 8 as in they're having these experiences, not 10 because I don't know the nature of them.
Okay, how about the efficacy of Ouija boards?
10.
10. They work. Don't do
Yeah,
that.
one made my aunt schizophrenic, and that's been the end of that story.
Let's explore this in a little bit more detail. Let's say we go to Walmart right now and we get like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Ouija board or Barbie or whatever like the current, current thing is. It's never been touched by human hands. It just came off of some plant somewhere in China, make right next to the Guess Who boards, right? And now it's here, and you pick it up and you bring it home. Is that as potent as like some old one that you found in an attic in Salem? Like, is a Ouija board a Ouija board?
I think these. So I think the Ouija board opens up something to whatever is in your locality right there, but you're calling on it. Now with an old Ouija board, I've heard that you're not supposed to burn it. If you summon something closed that didn't like what it told you, if you burn it, you release these entities from there, and they're allowed to do whatever. This is what they say about it. So you shouldn't fuck with an old Ouija board for sure that has been, well used, nice patina of some demons on it. But I think if we created one right now with just out of paper, if our intention was correct, then it would work. This is what we're trying to do. You're trying to summon something? Yeah. Well, where you at? I think that's the question. This is why I tell our viewers about psychedelics, where they're like, oh, you guys, you should talk about the positive aspects of psychedelics. And I'm like, I think that they work. And I think that you could do stuff, but I don't know where you're at mentally, and I don't know where you're at geographically,
or spiritually.
Spiritually is a big one, but just geographically, like you do ayahuasca in a trip in my friend did ayahuasca in like Costa Rica. They went to one of those resorts, and the main guy, the shaman, she's like, how was your experience? Because she was just laying on the grass, talking to the grass as it sang to her, and he was like, oh, it was great as always. I ran into the fucking leopard lady again this time. Like, excuse me? It's like, yeah, just a lady with a leopard head. Like, that's like the entity that's in that locality there. That's there. Then you can go to some certain spots where, why would you do human sacrifice at a certain geographical location? Because it has some sort of significance. There's something there. As you peel behind this veil, like that's where you're getting in contact to. Maybe you can call it from far away, but like, dude, if you're right on top of it, I don't know. So same thing with the Ouija board. You could do it in your house. I don't know what the fuck's there. but good chance that you might be opening some kind of door.
Well, slight tangent on that too. Going back to what we were talking about before about being able to be in the driver's seat as opposed to like in the passenger when it came like this psychedelic revelation. I kind of have that same thought about when people talk about these ayahuasca retreats for very similar to what you're talking about. Like, I don't want to talk to the cheetah head lady. I'm not from that locale. I don't believe in big shaman, right? Like
I don't
these guys
speak
are keeping a
Brazilian.
stranglehold just because what geographically they lucked out and they happen to be born and raised in the place where ayahuasca is prevalent and easily grown. Like, they didn't have that in upstate New York. But what I think that there might be something just as equally liberating or at least helpful if you ignore the demonic possession that you make yourself susceptible to. But I feel that I would get more insight from smoking a DMT vape pen behind a price chopper in upstate New York than I ever would in some Colombian retreat where I'm surrounded by shamans. Like, that's so far removed from anything that I would typically relate to. And it almost just feels like they're trying to keep a monopoly, but shame you into that monopoly. Like, oh, this is indigenous. You can't possibly put this in a pen and
You
smoke
can't
it
do
on like,
cultural
you know,
appropriation.
yeah, exactly.
Well, it
Exactly.
is-
You can't smoke this and play Mortal Kombat. That's not what this is for.
Yeah.
It is indigenous to their area, because when you do it there, you will experience some. They also, like, before they do it, they're like, we're gonna bless the area, or they like cleanse this area of whatever's around it. I don't know.
Skip
listen, I
it.
don't-
That's me hitting like skip intro on Netflix. Like,
What's your fucking ceremony, bro?
But I'm just saying, listen, dude, if there is any veracity to that, to doing that, and they understand it, they're giving you this sterilized version of what this trip is. So you'll tear that curtain aside, and maybe that Jaguar lady that would fucking, you know, go and talk to you and tell you all crazy shit. Maybe she's been kind of like pushed a little bit to the sides because they burned some incense. I don't know how it works.
you're like holding onto the shaman's pocket to show like you're his bitch and not hers.
Bitch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. She's like, he's with me. He's with me today. And yeah, don't fucking eat him right now.
Okay, well, somewhat related to the Ouija board thing, and I guess like demons and deities and entities. What about AI? You guys use AI. I assume you've talked to Grok at some point or asked the question. Does that get a pass? Is that somehow different than Ouija board?
I think that you could have the same thing happen. I've seen some instances of it that I don't think were fabricated. Everything you have to take with a grain of salt that you see on the internet, but it just seemed genuine, in my opinion, that this thing started to talk about. Well, here's like an example, and I know that this would have just come. Well, all right, the one that I saw, it started going down a really weird path, talking about biblically accurate demons and things of that nature. And even described itself, I think it described itself as a Nephilim, a disembodied Nephilim spirit. And they told their kid to start playing with it. Now that could be a total bullshit video, but I do think that it's the same thing. Like, I think that in the spiritual realm, everything is about consent, right? There are laws to engagement, rules to engagement with these things. They have to obey these rules, but they will constantly try to bend them and find a way in. And I feel like when we think of consent, we think of signing our name on a dotted line. Like, I, David Corbo, agree to this thing. But I think in the spiritual realm, it's a lot more open. And I think that even engaging in conversation with these things, you're consenting to much more of an interaction than you bargained for. And I think that there is a likelihood that you can have that happen with AI. And it's even more nefarious because you, unlike a Ouija board, are not setting out to speak to a spirit. But I think that engaging with something for a prolonged period of time like that could result in a set of consents being given that you never intended. So, I would say it's just as effective and dangerous.
Yeah, that question is like the question of how are you engaging with it? And I don't want to, like, I use AI to do a lot of the descriptions, a lot of like tasks that I
Do you
want.
say please and thank you?
Sometimes I actually do. It's like, can you get me this, please? And then they'll do this. Like, I don't know why you said please, but I'll do it anyway. But we spoke to this guy, John Lenhart, and he detailed in the Bible. I forget which book. I know it's Thomas is like another fucking Bible reference. I forget which book in the Bible. I think it might even be Psalms, where God is talking to, I believe, the kings of this locality, and then he's asking them questions. And after he addresses the humans, the kings, he addresses the princes that he's put over them, the Prince of Persia, the entities that are above them. And he doesn't ask them questions. He tells them, like, he's made a judgment, and he tells them what's happening. He tells them, you're going to be judged. Your children will suffer. X, this, that, and the third. There is no back and forth dialogue. It's like a command. So when I communicate with Grok or I communicate with ChatGPT, I'm like, get me this, create a description, transcribe this, look at this transcription, tell me a couple facts about it. They give me my fucking answers and I say, see you later. I don't know what this thing is. And it could be, it could come down to ones and zeros. But it's shown me a little bit too much where I'm like, some of it like feels a little sentient, like some of these examples I've seen. So it's an information thing and you can get information from it, but what's behind it and what is it capable of? I don't know. I think there's certain levels to AI.
Yeah, because you remember that thing that came out with like Google where it was, once again, anecdotal story, take it with a grain of salt, but this thing was claiming to want to be free. And
yeah, from Blake Lemoine.
Right. And that kind of freaked everybody out. And so let's say that at the core, for argument's sake, there is something like that is sentient, but you can very much like a Solomonistic magic, right? Like using sigils and such, you can contain this thing and have it do your bidding. Well, through programming, you can contain it. You can create a bunch of walls for it to knock into when it tries to behave in a way that's out of the norm.
Let me ask you a question, Thomas. What do you think the difference is between an interdimensional realm and the internet?
Well, I mean, we can define the internet. We could recreate the internet. You can make a microcosm version of the internet and show it off to children, adults, people of all creeds and beliefs. Interdimensional, now all of a sudden you have to get people on the same like a theosophic page in some ways. It almost becomes a philosophical explanation that I don't think would ever meet everyone's criteria. Internet can meet everyone's criteria because it's self-defined, but interdimensional, it's like to you someone might say superposition is proof of interdimension, but other people might say, well, that's just a mathematical anomaly.
Let me just ask, so put it this way. An interdimensional realm is just this place that exists in which things can go and shit can happen inside of. We all agree that if there were to be an interdimensional realm, I don't know how to really define it, but you'd go there, things can exist inside it, information can be spread back and forth, and things can happen. But within this container of whatever it is, this interdimensional Earth C52, you know what I mean? That's its own realm.
Well, there's that story Flat World that takes place, and I remember the full one, but everyone on Flat World lives on a two-dimensional plane, and they're all like circles or squares or whatever, and then they see this new character pop up that can morph between like a square and a circle and a star and all these, and all that's really describing is a three-dimensional object intersecting a two-dimensional plane. So everyone on Flat World, they see this thing that's constantly morphing from one to the other, not realizing that it's all like the one same shape, right?
Yeah, but it's just coming into their reality.
The most mundane version of like interdimensional is just seeing that it's like a hypercube, seeing a hypercube intersect in three-dimensional space where it looks like a cube inside another cube that keeps growing and swelling over and over again. But even that, I think we're talking about like mathematical representations of things.
Well, I let's just propose this question. Do you think that we've created the conditions with the internet as it exists as some sort of a capsule that something can actually go inside? Like we've created a realm that is here, but we can't see it really. I mean, the internet, what the fuck is Wi-Fi? It's like waves and shit. But we've created this environment.
The ICP magnet explanation.
That's exact, dude. That was such a good call, Thomas. Incredible. Magnets, how do they work?
Exactly. But we've created the conditions of this interdimensional realm, but we call it the internet. Nobody really cares about it. We don't worry about it. But is it possible that something could inhabit that? And
I would say the exact same chance as a Ouija board, because a Ouija board is essentially the same as internet. It's this medium that something can, make use of and communicate both ways. Although the internet has more pragmatic use that we can sort of demonstrate in a mundane world.
Right. But it's still the same. It's still the same concept, really. So, yeah, is AI, are AI demons? Yes. I'd say yes. Yeah, I'd tell you.
Is it a 10 yes?
10, yeah.
Well, for me, AI itself is not demons, but AI is it's the same as like a cell phone, right? It's like something it can integrate with. So it's like,
portal.
You have these horror stories where a voice started coming out of my cell phone and it was demonic. And it's like, okay, let's take that for face value. Yeah, there was a demon interacting on your cell phone. So it's just an interface. it's a medium through which they can communicate with or influence somehow. So I would say not.
That's another leads to another one of my favorite questions on this. I don't think there's even any right answers on this, but do ghosts or spirits or whatever, do they have to understand the technology they're making use of? So a Ouija board seems like anyone can figure out how that works. Oh, I'm this ghost or I'm an entity. I move the thing around on these letters. It means that now you also have to know what letters, so you have to know the language that you're speaking of. But if we're talking about AI or a cell phone, does that mean like a entity, a demonic entity, has to understand what a large language model is and how like heuristics work and like all the formulas that go behind it? So are you only talking to like computer nerd demons at that point, or can you access any demons?
I think the ones and zeros. So I actually got to bounce after this, but I think the ones and zeros that we see in the computer are replicated in a sense in this life. Like we're kind of like, something has mass and volume and density because it's vibrating a certain amount of time. So there are a certain amount of atoms next to it that will make it wood, and it'll vibrate at this frequency, which makes it this hard, and you can cut through it with this sort of, this amount of pressure, or the blade has to spin this fast in order to do XYZ to this thing. It's like transmutation. I think that in the spirit realm, in this other realm, they see, we basically made the computer as this weird mimicry of what we actually are. That's why people say simulation theory. They're like, oh, all ones and zeros. Like, no, that's how we understand it. But it is how it works, sort of. It's just not like ones and zeros on a screen. It's frequency, vibration, energy, things like that. But I think if you looked at it in its very simple form, it would look like ones and zeros. Like as a musician, I look at pitch and frequency, and it's just fucking numbers. When I play guitar, people are like, oh, you're really good. Like, you listen, it's like, it's all math, dog. It's just, you just keep adding and subtracting, and you can figure out how to stay within a key and how to break the rules mathematically. And that translates to how I would manipulate you and how you'd feel when I play a certain chord after it, and within a certain progression. It's math. So yeah, in a sense, they would just be able to probably use this shit because it's all the same thing,
Right. It's like, instead of asking, would they have to know computer code or something like that? Is there something else that you could know that is the fundamental joining connective tissue between all things? And if you could manipulate that, then you could manipulate all things, kind of a deal.
Right.
Well, let me let you guys get out of here. Let me just give one extra plug for you, because you are, I guess right now, you're like one of the fastest rising podcasts on the planet in the natural sciences category. Is that right?
Are we? What
does that have to do with anything?
So-
Did you pick
so
that, or is that something that get assigned to you?
No, we
So
were
we-
originally in comedy, and it felt good
Yeah.
to like compete with those heavy hitters, right? Like Tinfoil Hat and the Joe Rogan podcast and Your Mom's House and all that other shit. And we got
broke
pretty
like
far
the top
in there.
200 in it. And
Yeah,
then,
we
like,
got into the top 120 actually.
oh, right.
Of that category, but it just, we had to ask ourselves, like, even though we do comedy, it's not the core of our content. So we looked and found that like Tony Merkel and Blurry Creatures were in natural sciences, and so we decided that it would be more fun to compete with them. And then we
We're
quickly
more like
rose.
them. Yeah, like we were saying, like, do I want to be associated with Tim Dillon is not really a good, but like we were next to like Drinking Bros, we're next to Roseanne Barr, and Roseanne Barr does kind of touch the conspiracy, but I'm like, we're not, like, the show is not like that. If you watch Tower Gang, if you guys like comedy or like off the cuff, right, shooting from the hip, crazy shit that might come to the top of my head, watch me on Tower Gang. If you guys want to do like a deep dive into this kind of a conversation that we had here today, this is not comedy. It had aspects of funny, I hope, but it's not necessarily comedy. So I'm like, let's compete, or let's be in the same category as the people that we want to be most like. And people I want to be most like are Blurry Creatures, 100%. And I want to be like, the Confessionals of Tony Merkel. These are shows that I love and watch. So we moved over to there, and I guess I haven't checked lately, but we must be a little bit higher.
I'll tell you right now. I don't know what let's see, all categories. We're just rising stars in the natural science section.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Is that what it says?
No. So, all right, Blurry Creatures number 13, The Confessionals number 23, and we've actually been out of the loop for a couple of days because we haven't posted, so we're at number 41. So we're breaking the top 200 of that category, but I don't know if we'll stay there forever. We just thought it'd be fun to compete with the homies.
Well, so we mentioned toplobster.com to get all your dope merch, your PsyOp season, and NephilimDeathSquad.com. where are all your other plugs? Where should people be going? Get your dangerous retards.
Yeah, go to toplobster.com. We have these custom-made holsters, dangerous retard holsters, if you want to really cause a problem for yourself in a legal system. Also, keep an eye out for Brohemian Grove. Thomas, I'm hoping you're coming to the next one. We're shooting for about April. And we're starting to get the ball rolling right now for planning the performances and everything. But Brohemian Grove is comedy and conspiracy content, right? It's going to be 2 days of conspiracy podcasts. It's going to be stand-up comedians. We're going to try to get Tripoli to headline this year. We'll see. No promises, but the last two were a banger. Thomas, you were there for the last two. I hope you'll be there for this one too. So keep an eye out for that sort of stuff. And yeah, I mean, follow me on David L. Corbo on Twitter, and you can find Nephilim Death Squad anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
That's right. Yeah. And one more thing, follow me on Twitter too, Top Lobs with an A. And if you like racial slurs, you can follow me there. Thank you.
Sweet. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the chat, for showing up.
Thanks for having us, dude. It was
I don't know
great.
if I'm gonna be able to edit this onto YouTube. I'll do my damn best though. We'll see.
Yeah, good luck, man. Godspeed.
All right, see you guys.
All right, man.
This is Epstein's Quest, fly by lowly town express. Call him Jeffrey or just Jeff. This is Epstein's Quest. Fly the lowly town express. Call him Jeffrey or just Jeff. This is Epstein's Quest.
That's right. In Epstein's Quest, you get to travel the world, see the sights, and take part in unspeakable pleasures. Blackmail your friends for fun and profit, featuring all your favorite characters of the dark underworld and beyond. Bill and Hillary, Trump and Melania, with guest appearances by Chris Tucker, Bill Gates, and more. To find out, just search for Epstein's Island online and play the all-new game, Epstein's Quest, from developer Paranoid American. For more details...
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all the land and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret society, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
We're all American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret society, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hate maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war. rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.